Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and welcome to today's compilation video. I want to get that out there straight away just in case you don't like the compilations, totally up to you. But a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. And let's crack on with today's stories. Much love, guys. Now, before we do get into today's first story, it does contain talk of death and grief, so if you do want to skip the story, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. And this is from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit from a throwaway account who says, am I the arsehole for not wanting to feature my fiance's former SO who passed away in our wedding? Trigger warning for loss and death. My fiance was engaged for about a month to his high school sweetheart when she passed away in a tragic freak accident. For personal reasons, I don't want to get into how it happened, but it was no one's fault. This was maybe 6 years ago. Just for the purpose of the post, I'll call her Mandy. My fiance has been very open about this loss and how it affected him throughout our relationship. I know he misses her and the memories he has with her are important and special. I don't want to take away anything or demean the relationship, and I've always been there for him on hard days and supported him when he needed it. We got engaged last year. The date is to be determined, still for obvious reasons. It was very emotional for both of us and we've been really happy. But since planning the wedding, I've been feeling like I'm not only planning it for myself, but for Mandy as well. It started as comments from his family. A lot of, oh, Mandy would have loved this type things. I brushed it off at first and just thought it was a way of them processing grief. I have a great relationship with his family, but I know they loved Mandy too. When I went dress shopping, his mum and sister came. They kept talking about what dress Mandy would have worn, what they could see her in, etc. It might seem like nothing, but it really overtook the conversation. So much so that another bridesmaid told me later that she felt uncomfortable for me too. It turned from harmless comments into focusing what should be a special event for me into reminiscing over Mandy. My latest project has been compiling old photos of me and my fiance for a slideshow at the reception or rehearsal dinner, we haven't decided. He told me there's something he's been wanting to ask me. He really wants to include some kind of in memory of Mandy into our wedding and thinks a slideshow would be a perfect place. At this point I was and still kinda am fed up with the Mandy comments taking over our wedding. I sternly told him that no, I don't think that would be appropriate as this is our wedding and should focus on us. We are having a table with pictures of loved ones who passed and she will be featured there. He told me that he doesn't think that's enough to honor her memory. He wants to incorporate her in a bigger way, as she never got her dream wedding. He also thinks it would be a sweet surprise for Mandy's parents, who are invited since he's still really close to them. I did lose my cool, I will admit. I told him honestly how I felt about the Mandy situation taking over our wedding and how I'm uncomfortable with it. I also asked him if he could ask his family to limit the Mandy comments at our wedding, since now I'm afraid the whole wedding will be focused on her. I told him that I need time away to think and have been staying at my parents' house, but we've still been talking. Am I the arsehole? Am I overreacting? Now, I think I understand grief pretty well. As I said, I've been through quite a bit of it over the last few years. I understand everyone grieves in different ways, and I think that's okay as long as you're doing it in a healthy way. But from what I'm reading here, it's not healthy at all. It doesn't sound like the family, any of the family, has processed it. It sounded like something was already there to show respect to Mandy and other loved ones that have passed. And it's the same thing that my niece done at her wedding, is that at a table for loved ones that had passed, that was near the entrance door to the room and had some candles on it and things like that. And it was a beautiful thing to include. But they clearly haven't processed it, because anyone, I would like to think, is thinking straight would see this as massively inappropriate. But Saluntis87 says, not the arsehole. Your fiance and his family seem to have forgotten that he is supposed to be marrying you, not Mandy. I understand that everyone grieves on their own terms, but to actually make his dead fiance a focus of your wedding is crossing the line. He's refusing to move on, and hijacking the wedding on Mandy's behalf is only going to cause more problems. I would suggest putting the kibosh on the wedding temporarily. At the very least, he clearly needs some kind of therapy, or else he may as well not even bother with a wedding. If he's not going to move on, then you may need to move out. Make America Swole Again says, it's honestly insulting on how wrapped up they are about this girl. I understand grieving, but it's been 6 years and you are not Mandy. Your fiance has no business flaunting his dead fiance in front of you on your freaking wedding day. He's basically admitting that he is not over her. Not the arsehole, and you need to deeply consider spending the rest of your life with someone who you wouldn't even be acquainted with if his first choice didn't pass away. Fingerheart89 says, not the arsehole at all. Listen, I also lost my partner at 25. Very traumatic experience. We were engaged and then in a minute, everything changed. Years passed and I met someone new and we are engaged. The family of my late partner is indeed invited. We are close. My fiance knows everything about my late partner. He asks about him and honestly puts an effort to let me know he's there for me. And I also make an effort to keep his memory alive because it hurts me he died when he was only 24. With that said, I understand my fiance has priority here and I wouldn't want to make him uncomfortable at all, especially after him being incredibly understanding. Our wedding day will be about us. Having something like in memory of M would be a bit weird because I'm not getting married in his memory. I don't know if your partner has been to therapy or not, but that would be my recommendation. I know this helped me immensely to put a place in my heart for love and grief. And a final comment from the Moo Cat who says, not the arsehole, your boundaries are perfectly reasonable and you even have space for it at the place for loved ones that have passed away. What he and his family are doing is frankly a bit creepy. He's marrying you. This isn't Mandy's would have been wedding. I would say that you should talk with your fiance and maybe even go to couples counseling and or try to get him with a grief therapist. His deceased significant other really shouldn't be the focus of your wedding. It should be a happy time to celebrate your union. OP came back into the post and says, update. Thank you to everyone for the kind words. I've had a lot to digest over the past few days. I did try to post a separate update but was told to just add it under my original. I'll try to put a condensed version under here. The wedding is postponed indefinitely. We are still together and working through things. He was defensive about the situation at first, but eventually came around. We both agreed that couples therapy is needed and are in the process of starting that. As for his family, they are deeply sorry, especially, mostly, his mum. When I went to talk to her about it, she was really in tears. Mandy was like a daughter to her, so she said, and she just hasn't gotten over losing her yet. I talked to her about therapy. She told me she didn't go after Mandy died, and she agreed it's something to look into, though not sure if anything concrete has come of it. I can't say that I feel 100% better about the situation, and I think that my relationship with his mum now has a bit of a strain on it, even if she did apologize. But I'm hoping to work through these things in therapy, and if I can't or my fiance can't, then I have to do what's best for me and end the relationship. If anything else were to happen, I'll try to post an update. Again, thank you to everyone for the support. It means a lot. And I'm afraid that was OP's last post on the matter, so it did end up being sort of a bit inconclusive. We did know that, eventually it's either therapy and they try to work through it or they end the relationship. So whilst it is a bit inconclusive, I'm glad that OP did postpone the wedding and did take time to say, this isn't right and talk to the relevant people about it and has a plan if things don't work out. It's really sad how grief can do a number. Like, I'm not making excuses or anything like here, but grief can absolutely knock you for a six. And not just immediately after it happened, it can happen years after. It can just suddenly sneak up on you. You don't realize it's happening, but then one day suddenly you're in tears about it. And it's strange because that's something that's recently happened to one of my friends who lost a sibling some time ago, but now things are starting to show. But they are seeking help for it, of course. But oh dear me, what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story. And our next story does have an update as well, titled, I feel my boyfriend has taken advantage of my kindness. I confronted him. Am I the arsehole here? And this is from Left in the Lurch from the Am I the Arsehole Here subreddit. It says, my boyfriend, 33 male, and I, 38 female, have been dating since summer 2021. And since then, he stayed at my apartment every day and every night. He owns his own home less than a mile away, which he said he purchased for his 3 roommates who were looking for a place to live. He only charges them $300 or so a month, out of the goodness of his heart. I've been there twice for house parties, which I essentially invited myself to when we were getting to know each other. I never have asked him for money, not for rent, not for utilities, not for the groceries I always have to buy. He never goes shopping for any food or household supplies. 2 separate instances I have asked if he could get toilet paper. Once he bought a chintzy 4-pack at the gas station he was already shopping at, which I'm assuming is just to tide us over until I get a more realistic package. He has IBS and goes through a lot. And the second time, he brought in a big garbage bag of almost empty rolls from his bathrooms at work, which they save. He doesn't cook and said in the past it's not important to him or he doesn't think of it, yet will certainly eat the food I buy and make. For the most part, I was more than happy to provide, but as time goes on, I feel like I'm carrying the mental load of living together by myself. My apartment is in disarray and I can never get it under control with only me doing any work. I've mentioned parts of above to him over the last year, and sometimes it would result in him sheepishly doing 1 sink full of dishes and leaving the rest for me. Or when I tell him he has to figure out dinner for us for 1 night out of the 7 because I'm working late. That means he's door dashing us something at 8 PM. It's things like that that make me start to resent him and kill my attraction. It hurts my feelings. Such a nice guy, how can he be so thoughtless? It feels thoughtless to me anyway. I told him tonight I feel it would be best if we return to our old living situation, him at his home and me alone here. I expressed I can't, or won't, handle all the responsibility of our lives cohabiting. I also said it really hurt my feelings that for Christmas he got me Drano. Dearie me. Which he waited to give me on Christmas. Meanwhile, the sink has been backing up for a month. And a set of ladles. He didn't say anything. He just sat there and stared at me. I asked if he had anything to say. Any feelings about it. He said he didn't know what to say. And I felt insulted. There are far too many women in the same situation. I'm finding as I read Reddit. Are all men truly just one-track minded? They only think of themselves. Why don't men just take the initiative to help their partners without having to be given lists, or told what to do, or nagged about it? And we're starting the comments with icy thanks. Listen to yourself. Why are you with this child? Wait, I just got to the Christmas/Drano. What the fuck? Have some respect for yourself and dump this guy immediately. Yeah, no reply to that saying, don't forget the high-end ladle set. Psycho Soon says, my sister, what in the actual fuck are you doing? Drano. Change the locks, put his stuff on the lawn and call him to come get it before it rains. You need to drop the idiot like a bad habit. He's been using you as his bang maid and it's astounded that you figured it out. Do not go back to him. Someone says he should be an ex, to which Why Am I So Awesome replies that saying, yep, my ex followed it up a few weeks later when he was stoned with a phone call about how he misses all the things that I did for him. Cooking, cleaning, washing, and I don't miss the things that he did for me. When I asked what he actually did for me, it was make a coffee first thing. He got up first anyway and put petrol in the car. No, I don't miss those things, like, at all. He couldn't even claim to have mowed the lawn because that was a foot high. I was being stubborn and refused. He lent our lawnmower to his friend for 2 rent inspections in between mowing ours, and he didn't take the trash out, despite having a dog that would get in the bin. So, OP came back into the post and said, so since this, he was still in my living room for a few hours. I've been in bed with COVID, and laying there I got miffed. I walked back in and asked twice more. You have nothing to say. No words. No, I'm so sorry you feel that way. What can I do? Nothing. No emotion. I can't believe it. This was supposed to be my best friend. I told him we're breaking up and he needs to go home now. I'm honestly really surprised and hurt by his lack of reaction. I should have known. Update 2. I packed his things and he packed up this morning. I asked him again if he has any feelings about this and he was silent. I'm sorry, but I started to cry because it's just so hurtful. He said he was blindsided, then silent. I said, that's all I get after 2.5 years, in tears, and he just said, bye Lauren, like he always would. I needed him to hear me, or understand where I was coming from, but I guess he doesn't, or doesn't care to. He's alright with just walking away with his things, with no conversation or words from the heart. That is the most painful thing out of all of this. His talks of getting a house, getting married. Why bother if you're just going to throw in the towel when me supporting us gets overwhelming? For those of you who asked why I kept this going for so long, we met when my father died and grew close. I wanted to have him in my life. It was positive and a breath of fresh air from my former partners. He was a kind, sensitive, thoughtful, caring guy when I met him. He even on his own volition promised me he wouldn't be a low-tier dude like the others. I don't know if he's on the spectrum, many of you asked. He's joked about it in the past. He's not a bad guy. I guess he really just doesn't care, and I've got to accept and try to learn from where I went wrong in the beginning. So, someone asked OP, they said, sounds like he was looking for a reason to leave. OP says, I think that's the case. He was just waiting or looking for a way to end our relationship. I would have preferred to have known. Which OP comes in with one more update and says, you know what? I painted him in a bad light. Sure, these things happen, but ultimately he's a good guy. Maybe we're just not a good fit. Perhaps I went about things in a wrong way by escalating it so quickly. Perhaps I'm too quick to blame and not good at communicating in our relationship. Either way, I got the space I so desperately wanted. I appreciate all your input today. The response was astounding. I guess the takeaway to my failed relationship is to be sure to check in with your partners, where they're at, if their needs are being met, if there's anything you can do, if you're both still on the same page. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's have another story from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit. Doesn't have an update as yet, but it's from Overall Candy 4513 and says, Am I the arsehole for not continuing my reception after my husband went behind my back? My now husband, Lucas, 26, and I, female 25, were getting married. We decided to tie the knot as we're having a little girl together and are madly in love. So leading up to the wedding day, Lucas told me that his best man, Jacob, wanted to propose to his girlfriend as it would be a great time and it is a nice venue to do it at. I said that I didn't want him to propose at our wedding as it is our special moment, not theirs, and that they can do it sometime else. Lucas told me that his friend was mad that I didn't agree. I just wanted the wedding to be about us because it was our special day. After that disagreement, I thought nothing of it. Fast forward to my wedding day. Oh no. We had finished the church service and now we're at the reception, and we were all having fun eating. I'm eating my food and then Jacob stops the music at the DJ booth to make an announcement. I just knew from that moment he was going to propose. I looked to see where Lucas was and he was holding red and white roses, walking out to stand in front of Chloe, Jacob's girlfriend, spelling out, "Will you marry me?" I was shocked that they went behind my back when I said no. I got up out of my seat and walked out. It's been 2 days since the wedding and my husband cursed me out for not letting them have a special moment. I responded with, I wanted the day to be about us because it's our wedding, not theirs, and I'm happy for them. But the worst thing was, even though I said no, he went behind my back about it. Since that argument, he moved to the guest bedroom and now most of my friends are cursing me out on all my socials. Am I the arsehole? And we'll start off with Lost All Doubt, who says not the arsehole times 3. There are so many posts here on the revenge forums about arseholes who propose at other people's weddings. It's a terrible thing to do, and I'm surprised his girlfriend didn't turn down the engagement for doing something like that. If he wanted a nice venue, he should have paid for a nice dinner or something, not use a celebration you just spent thousands of dollars on to make it about him. I'd be requesting the cost of their meals back. The fact that your new husband went behind your back is also pretty terrible. Your friends who are cursing you out on social media can easily be removed from your life. Your husband, though, I think this is something that will have to be discussed in couples counseling so he can see what a selfish backhanded thing he did. Kiwi Sparkle says not the arsehole. The friend is an arsehole and a cheapskate, and he should have backed off the minute he realized you didn't like the idea. Your husband is the bigger arsehole. If your husband can't respect a simple decision like that on your wedding day, see it as a sign for your future. Getting this marriage annulled, it won't last long if you aren't prepared to be a doormat. I'm going to go with what typically happens as well. You as the bride probably put more effort into this day than the groom, so truly this should have been your choice. If you care about people's opinions, Send out one mass text explaining what happened and how your wishes were disrespected. Then go silent. One final comment from Forget Regret one day, who says, "Why do people think it's okay to do this? It's not, especially when they're told no. So I suspect your now husband told him to do it even after you said not to, which is the bigger issue in my mind. I'm really sorry this happened. It's unacceptable and hurtful that these selfish people are so cheap that they take a day someone else planned and paid for to make it their own. I have a million suggestions for things you can do at their wedding, but that doesn't help you now. Your husband messed up big time and doesn't seem to care that he hurt you, not the arsehole." Thinking of like people taking over moments, etc., etc. There was a story I read once. I don't know if it was on like Facebook or something like that. One of the social medias about the London Eye, and basically with the London Eye, you can either book like to go in with a group of people like random, so you just pay for your ticket and get on and go round, or you can even book your own private booth. So it's just you and whoever you want to go in this booth and go round. Obviously, it's a lot more expensive. But this guy had set up a surprise proposal. He didn't pay for the big tickets. He just paid to go in with everyone else. And it was a packed pod that they were going round. And he took a photographer with him. And they were going round. And basically, as they get near the top, this guy does his proposal thing, and then asks everyone to move to like the back of the pod so his photographer can get some photos. And like, there's a couple of people there like, "Nah, that's not happening. We paid to be on here at the same time as well." So in the back of his photos, there's like a guy stood there just looking out over London. But then the guy puts these photos on social media and says, "Oh, look at this inconsiderate person in the back of my photos." And then obviously people just tore him apart. The guy who was doing the proposal, that is. Like people just saying that you should have like purchased your own pod or something like that. Go on a really quiet day when there's not many people there, which I think is pretty rare, I think. But what do you guys make of this situation? Do you think Opie was okay to get up and walk out of it? What do you think about the husband and the friend? What would you do? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And our next story comes from Patient Somewhere 86 from the Am I the Arsehole Here subreddit, and says, "Am I the arsehole here for thinking about divorce? Throwaway as my husband knows my Reddit. I, 34 female, have been with Ken, not his real name, 37 male, since I was 16. We met in school as he was my brother's friend. We've been married for 10 years, have a 2-year-old son on the way, and Ken has always been my person. The person who you can't picture life without, and I honestly can't remember not loving him. I grew up with him, he's my everything. Unfortunately, Ken has this issue where he takes on everyone else's feelings like to heart. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. However, recently his best friend of 20 years has just found out that his wife has been cheating on him and none of the children are his. Obviously, his friend is devastated and is staying in our guest room. He's a nice guy, just life has him down right now. He started the process of divorce. The more time Ken spends with his friend, the more depressed he's become and distant. Our mornings used to start where I would wake up at 6 a.m. with our son, make breakfast, and about 8 a.m. I would wake Ken up with a coffee and some breakfast before going to drop little one off at the nursery and go to work. Ken works from home most days, only going to the office on a Monday. So I'd give him his coffee, he'd give me a kiss, then I'd go off on my happy little way. Then I'd finish work, get our son and go home where Ken would be making tea. I'd clean up after whilst he was bathing our son and putting him to bed. I thought this was life. It might sound boring to some, but it was my life and I loved it. Our house was filled with love. We would spend our nights cuddling, talking, watching a movie, date night once a month. We would take our son out together on a Saturday and then Sunday go visit family or have friends over. You get the picture, I'm rambling, sorry. Anyway, for the past month things have been changing. Ken is more depressed. I make him a coffee in the morning and just get a mumbled thanks. I come home from work and the friend and him would be in the living room watching sports. I'm now making tea, bathing our son. Neither of them will barely talk to me. We don't go out on the weekends together. I feel like a single parent. I've tried to talk to Ken about it all, but I get one-worded answers. Then he stays up till about 1 a.m, which I know is not super late, but I'm passed out by then. I'm exhausted, alone, and pregnant. I miss my husband. Yesterday I came home from work and you know when something just doesn't feel right? Well, I went to find Ken to see what he was doing as his friend wasn't in the house, but Ken's car was. He was in his office looking up DNA kits for our son. I asked him why and his response was, well, I just want to make sure all the kids are mine before I continue looking after them as I'm not a free childcare. This broke me. When I say I'm devastated, it's an understatement. But if he thinks that I've cheated on him, then surely the trust is gone. Is there any going back? Am I just pregnant and hormonal? Would I be extreme for looking for a divorce? I could put the papers in the envelope with the results from the DNA test. I think I'm going to go cry in bed now. I had to take the day off work as I feel like I've just been gut punched. Wow. Now obviously these feelings and thoughts are being fed like the seeds planted from the guy who's going through divorce, the guy who's been cheated on. And I'm not excusing it because I'm trying to put myself in OP's shoes and I don't know how you kind of, this could be a very much a me problem. I don't know how you move on something like that. You're basically being accused of infidelity when you just said that you've had this perfect life up to this point. But clearly this guy coming into your house and feeding your husband all this information is putting doubts in his mind. And obviously people do move past this kind of thing, but I always struggle in my mind to see how you do move past it. Like I said, it's very much a me thing. Obviously the recently divorced guy needs to go if this is the case. He obviously knew something was up by not being in the house when you got back. Getting him out the house and having couples counseling, is that going to solve the issue or is it past that? I really don't know which way this could go, but as Zorgi says, your husband's feelings are being fed from his friend. Working from home a lot disconnects you from being social, and the only social activity he gets is depression from his friend. The friend has to go, and once he does, you two can work on getting back on track the way you were. You really need to explain to him, and he should understand. These are all actions of the other person, not your husband, if that makes sense. Get through this, and you two can be that much stronger. But as long as this other person is around, I feel it will only get worse. Good luck. Aggravating Film replies to that and says, misery loves company. His friend is miserable and projecting his toxicity on your husband. Two Bionic Knees says, kick the friend out immediately, as in pack his shit in bags, throw it on the doorstep and don't let him back in the house. Tell your husband he can start acting like a husband or let his friend destroy his fucking life with his toxic bullshit. That's if he carries on or stays friends with this arsehole, then your marriage is over, and he'll be living elsewhere, paying child support and depressed for ruining his own life. Not the arsehole. There is being sympathetic to a friend, and there is being disgustingly easily manipulated because you had no trust in your wife. He trusted his friend and let it change his views of you in weeks over someone he's been with for years. You aren't even a stay-at-home mum, but out there working and sharing the care of your son. But he acts like you're now leeching off of him. What an ass. His friend is terrible, but he's also an arsehole for remotely buying into it. Winterworld561 says you need to talk to his friend and ask him to leave ASAP, as he is causing issues for your own marriage, and he has your husband questioning if his son is actually his. This friend is toxic and has been whispering in your husband's ear, sabotaging your marriage and family out of bitterness from what his wife did. If your husband kicks off at you for asking his friend to leave, then serve him divorce papers with paternity test results showing the kids are his, and tell him he's lost his family because he chose to listen to his arsehole, bitter friend. And one final comment from Rogue One Freedom, who says, not the arsehole. Ken needs to leave your home and you both need counseling. I, 51 female, was in an 8-year relationship roller coaster. It took me a while to figure it out. The days that he, 58 male, had spent hours on the phone with his college buddy or enabling sister or narcissistic mother, I would pay the price emotionally and verbally. Every time our relationship took 2 steps forward, we ended up 3 steps back after these phone calls. It took many years, yes, years to figure this out. It appears you are more emotionally and mentally invested in this relationship than your husband, same as me. Otherwise, he would have never abandoned you this way. And the idea of asking for a paternity test and the other disgusting comment would be unthinkable. I don't think you need to jump instantly into divorce, but you definitely need professional therapist and counseling to get you both back on the same page if possible. Best of luck. OP replied to that one saying, thank you for this. Reading this made me realize what it is I feel. I feel abandoned. I'm 8 months pregnant and just feel abandoned. So Opie adds another post in the same subreddit titled, I've asked my husband to move out. Am I taking this too far? He said, hello Reddit. Well, after my post earlier this afternoon, I cried and read all your lovely comments and I couldn't be more grateful. I think posting it about here really helps for some reason. Weird how telling complete strangers that I'm struggling with life seems to help. So I think after my pity party, which couldn't last long due to being a parent, I called my stepmom and dad. My mum died when I was 10. They're coming to stay with me on Friday. Crying on the phone helped, although I'm not really sure they could truly understand a word of what I was saying. I've spoken to Ken. Well, more like spoke at Ken, telling him that his friend has till Thursday to leave. I'm not a monster and can't just tell him to leave at the drop of a hat. I've also told Ken that he needs to leave too. Oh yes, I could go to my dad's house. I don't want to disrupt my little one any more than needed, and all the things for my baby is here too. Especially as I'm 8 months along, it just seems stupid for me to be the one to leave. I've made it a point of not pointing out it's my house either. I'm trying to be calm and sensible. I'm not 100% sure Ken listened, but I did message his sister, who is a force to be reckoned with, and she said she'll make sure he's gone by Thursday night. Things I've told Ken I want is yes, he can have the DNA test, but I will be damned if I'm the one to do it. He can also have one for the baby, as I ain't got shit to hide. I know that some people have questioned why I'm so against it. Let me make something clear. I would never cheat because, as I said in my last post, Ken is or was, I don't know, my person. He's the only man I've ever been with, so that isn't any concern of mine. I'm just hurt that he wants one because he clearly doesn't trust me. So things I want him to have the DNA tests mainly so I can make him eat the results. Not literally, I'm just venting. I'm also going to suggest couples therapy. I already see one due to losing my mum and my little sister in a car crash when I was little. I want to suggest he sees one alone, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. I don't want to force him to do anything he doesn't want to do. I want him to maintain contact with our son. Yes, he doesn't believe he's the father right now, but that's no reason he should neglect him as he's his, and I don't want to upset my son. Yeah, he's only 2, but he still deserves all the love from both his parents. He's done nothing wrong, and obviously this one when she comes along. Still not sure about the state of my marriage, but even if divorce is what happens, I need to be able to get through to him that he can be the father he was. Am I going insane? Do I sound insane? I don't know why writing here helps so much. Thanks Reddit. And I'll give you a general gist of the comments, basically that the husband has a lot of work to do to try and rebuild things, and it seems like OP's given them a way back in. They said, there is counseling there is solo counseling as well you can go to, and I'm glad that OP did lean on support systems. I'm gotta be honest, I'm waiting for that sister to come in. She's, like OP said, she's a force to be reckoned with. Holy moly, that guy is in some trouble, I think. And everyone's showing OP a lot of respect for the way that they're thinking, that they're being very clear and logical, especially in this condition with all the hormones as well, the pregnancy going on, as going through a hell of a lot. OP added another post in the same subreddit that said, my husband got his DNA test results. He still thinks I've cheated. Oh, dearie me. Hello again. I don't know how to update posts, so I just had to make another one. Following my 2 other posts, I will answer some questions. Yes, it is my house. It was left to me when my mum died. I've lived here all my life. I didn't move out because I have a child and one on the way, so why should I be the one to leave? I get that some people believe I was the arsehole for asking him to leave, but as I was heavily pregnant, have a toddler and it's my house, I wasn't about to leave. Yes, he could have stayed, but have you tried living with someone who just wants to argue or just not talk? I prefer my child not to live in that environment, thank you. At the end of the day, I'm a mother first and a wife second. If you think that's harsh, then I don't know what to tell you. My children come first, end of. Well, Ken's friend did leave the day I told him. He had till Thursday. He wasn't happy about it and shouted some insults at me, which was amazing. Ken's sister came and picked up Ken. I wish I could tell you what she said, but she didn't say anything in front of me. Just kept giving Ken death stares. We did get the DNA test for the little one, and Ken is the father, obviously. Ken somehow thinks I've intercepted the results, even though I wasn't the one that did it. I wasn't the one that got handed the results, etc., so he's clearly lost his mind. My dad came over, and whilst I was making tea, my waters broke. My little girl is here and she is healthy and happy. She was 9 pounds 8 ounces, so no concern of anything with her. I'm now a mum of 2. I'm home now and Ken has been to see his baby girl. Although she's not had a DNA test, he disagrees with her being his because his family doesn't have many girls. Yet he has a sister, so I just rolled my eyes. I don't really know where to go from here. Ken is refusing therapy. He says there's nothing wrong with him or his brain. I beg to differ. He wants to get another DNA test for our boy, but won't tell me when or where, so I can't interfere. Maybe one day he will come to his senses. My dad and stepmom are staying with me for a while to help me with the babies. I'd like to say I'm okay, but honestly my emotions are all over the show. I don't know which way is up. Ken's sister visits the babies, and we have an unspoken rule that we don't speak about Ken apart from when our son asks about him. I wish it was the kind of update where he got the results and seen how much of an idiot he's been and we move on, but sadly that's not the case. I can't dwell on it too much, just take shit one day at a time. I do miss my person. I'm worried that he's missing out on his baby girl's life already, which if I think about too much I just sit and cry, but I don't have time for that. As always, thanks for listening to me rant. I might update if anything happens in my life. Right now I'm still left wondering if I'm doing the right thing here. Is there anything I could do differently? Why are my kids so hard for him to accept all of a sudden? OP's last post came on their own page, which said, "Am I the arsehole for making it difficult for him to find a solicitor?" Hello again Reddit, things have been bizarre, but now I have closure. I know what's happened to my marriage. I know what scum Ken really is. He's not my person and never truly was. So now I just want to divorce him, cut my losses and move on with my life. I'm still at home with my baby, settling into motherhood. My dad and stepmom are still here, but they will be leaving soon once I'm more emotionally stable. To say I'm okay would be a lie, but I now know what I need to do. Have some sort of closure with Ken. I know what happened with him, and I know that it's not my fault. Turns out Ken was having an affair and has a baby on the way. Even typing that makes me want to throw up. I found this out when a visibly pregnant lady just knocked on my door and asked me when I would be leaving the house, as it's Ken's house. When I say this confused the crap out of me, I mean it. I talked to this woman for a while to try and work out what she was talking about. It turns out that she's Ken's side piece. Well, technically in her head, she's his fiance. A month ago, Ken got down on one knee and proposed to her in my fucking kitchen. Classy, right? So, they've been seeing each other for a while. She's having his baby. She believes I'm the ex-wife who Ken is letting him stay in his house till I get on my feet. Well, we apparently broke up a few years ago, and none of my kids are Ken's. When I go to work in the mornings, Ken goes to her house and works from there. They were waiting for marriage to move in together. How are you trying to marry someone when you're already married? Fucking weirdo. I asked for proof of all of this. She has pictures of them together. Apparently she has an OnlyFans account that they make content together. I told her we were still married and explained everything to her. I'm not sure what she's going to do, but hey, not my circus, not my monkey. Now I want a divorce. Is it true once you talk to a solicitor about a divorce, they can't represent the person you're divorcing? I want to go around our town and meet with as many solicitors as possible as the first hour is free, so that he has a very hard time getting representation. Is that too petty? The house is in my name only and is protected, so there is no way he can take it. I have all my money and we do have a joint account, but that's just what we put our share of the household bills in. I haven't spoken directly with Ken. His family have completely cut him off and he's been kicked out of his sister's house. All those people who were concerned about him having a tumor or something wrong with his brain, I really don't think that's the case. I think his actions just caught up with him, as his lies were going to come out once his baby was born. I think that's what happened. He got backed into a corner and tried to fight his way out. Through the divorce process, I will get the court to do a DNA testing so he has proof for both. Even if he chooses to not believe it, I'm mentally exhausted from all of this and sat wondering how I didn't divorce, how I didn't notice. Might have to go for an eye test. But honestly, would I be so wrong for just making his life as difficult as possible to get legal advice, or is that too far? I want him to suffer. And I'll just cover a couple of comments from those ones to get a general gist of what people are saying. So Julia said, I'm a legal assistant. When I worked for the state, we would have a lot of opponents representing themselves without lawyers, either to save money or because the opponent was an insane conspiracy theorist. You might think the attorneys I worked for would be glad when their opponent had no attorney because that makes for an easy win, right? Wrong. Our opponent having no attorney and no idea what they were doing just made the process overly complicated and painful and annoying and dragged it out. True, there are insane conspiracy theorist attorneys out there too, but the vast majority of the time, once the defendant realized they were in over their head and hired an attorney, it made the process go smoother and faster. I know nothing about divorce court, but I hypothesize sabotaging his attempts to get an attorney will make the ordeal worse for you too. You have proof of infidelity, the house was acquired before the marriage, you have this in the bag already. Just go through the motions of serving the paperwork, letting time pass, etc. The less shenanigans anyone causes, the smoother and faster it will go. I don't know if soon-to-be ex has a motive to drag the process out, but preventing or delaying him finding an attorney is no protection against that. Now, personally, I wasn't thinking from a legal perspective because I just bloody don't have a clue. You know me. But my initial thoughts is just sort of like, move on from this guy. You know, he's already blown up his own life. And it sounds like he will continue going down this path. So there's no point in dragging yourself down with him, worrying about what he's doing. Don't let him take up your mental space. Move on, live a good life. The saying is something along the lines of the best form of revenge is living the best life, right? So I think certainly go down that route and just don't let him take up your headspace. But Illustrious Total says, not a lawyer, but I've read a bunch of threads on Reddit, and the consensus for doing that lawyer shopping thing seems to be that it's not technically illegal in most places, but the judge overseeing the case will not be happy if they find out. I mean, even if you was going down that path, how long would it take anyway? I'm not sure how many lawyers or solicitors there are per town, but let's say like a minimum of 10, and each one's going to take like at least an hour of an initial meeting before you get what you want out of it, right? That's at least 10 hours of your time without the driving, without the traveling, without arranging for your children to be looked after during that time. That's a lot of hassle, isn't it? But one more comment from Overall Scholar 4676. It says, wonder if his good old friend is still buddies with him since he turned out to be a cheater like his ex-wife. I'd make his life difficult. Take everything you can and ruin his reputation with everyone. Drag that divorce as long as you can if he's wanting a rush job. Make him pay you money on top of child support and have half of everything else he has. Can you imagine what content he's putting on that page? And him, a father. Gross. But now, put yourself in OP's position. What would you do in it? Would you drag this out? Would you go to these multiple solicitors? Would you find another way of doing it? Or would you just move on, live your best life, and move past this person? Obviously getting that child support at the same time. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And our next story comes from Appropriate Elk 2603 from the Am I the Arsehole Here subreddit. Does have an update, of course, and says, am I the arsehole here for telling my brother he cannot stay with me over Christmas if he brings his prosthetic leg? My younger brother has a prosthetic leg. I think it's creepy as fuck and I have no idea where he got it from. I'm reasonably certain that it is something I would rather not know. To be clear here, my brother has two perfectly healthy legs still attached to his body. Hey, what now? He just has this thing he takes with him everywhere. I don't know why. I don't want to know. Before you ask, yeah, it's probably a mental health thing. He wanted to stay with me rather than our parents while he is home for the holidays. I said he was welcome to stay as long as he doesn't bring that thing into my house. He said it wasn't a big deal and that he would leave it in his luggage. I agreed on the condition that if I saw it outside of his luggage in my home, then I had the right to destroy it. He backtracked on staying with me and is at our parents' house, where he is miserable. They still treat him like a little boy instead of a guy who is almost 30. He called me again after supper and asked to please stay with me. I said he could as long as we, together, took his thing and put it into a storage unit until he leaves. I get the key. He won't do it. He says that I'm being a bitch for not letting him stay with me. I think he needs to get therapy or medication or both, or a girlfriend, boyfriend, dog, cat, hamster, something. Just not a GD prosthetic leg. Now, I think the top comment on this one's going to sum up a lot of people's thoughts. It certainly summed up mine. This was from Bodybuilder Kitchen 45, by the way. Progression of my reactions. Title, oh yeah, you fucking suck. Of course, we're all going to think that, right? First paragraph, what do you mean? Second paragraph, huh? Third paragraph to the end, the fuck? Captain Shan says, I know, right? I was like, that's really mean. Oh, he has 2 whole legs. Chris 1986 says, I know this is extremely distressing for you, but I'm laughing so hard. At first, I was like, is this arsehole serious? She won't let her brother bring his leg. Like his whole ass leg he needs to walk on because he's literally lost a leg in some horrible accident. But then you clarified both he has healthy legs and are still attached, and I lost it. Not the arsehole, but you and I are not the same. I would need to know. All of it. Where did you get it? Why do you have it? What do you do with it? Did you steal it off a bum or something? Then I would stare at him uncomfortably until he broke and told it all to me. I may later regret my decision, but I don't often think that far into the future when something catches my attention. Polly says an emotional support prosthetic leg. That's a new one. Fantastic Warning says her brother won it in a raffle and it came all the way from France in a crate marked fragile. The leg is actually a lamp and it wears a black fishnet stocking, a black high heel shoe, and a fringed lampshade. Dan says, I'm a prosthesist and I have to ask, what does this leg even look like? Below knee or above knee? Does it just have the pylon bare? Or is there a foam covering so that sort of looks like a leg? Is there a foot shell on it? Or is the foot component just sort of hanging out? The reason I'm asking is because A, prosthetic anything is mind-bogglingly expensive, and B, you can't just have a prosthetic leg if you have 2 perfectly healthy legs. You literally need a stump to make one that's specifically yours. Did your brother receive it from someone? Did he steal it? And just to be sure, it's an actual prosthesis and not a leg brace of some kind. I've had patients and their families make that mistake before. OP says it looks like a carbon fiber cup with a steel knee and lower leg and foot. Dan then replies to OP and says AK prostheses are not cheap. There's an entire car right there. I would actually grill your bro on where he got it because it is 100% not his. If he stole it, he's looking at a felony/grand theft charges. If he bought it, check his and your parents' financials because again, these things are insanely expensive and he doesn't sound like the brightest bulb. Make sure he does not try to sell the prostheses or any of its components. I get that they can be hard to get for the people who need them the most, but if the components are damaged in any way, they can lead to gnarly injuries for when they inevitably fail. If you truly do want to get rid of it, there are organizations out there that will take old prostheses and refurbish them. I love it when an expert on specific subjects join the chat. Gin and Tonic with Dog says, out of interest, what happens to prosthetics when their owner dies? Do they get refitted to someone else? Not the arsehole for not wanting it in your house though. Opie says, unfortunately, the vast majority get tossed. The socket is specific to the owner and you can't really adjust them to someone else's limb due to the material and the fact that everyone else's stump is different. Components such as the knee and foot are technically reusable, but a lot of the time they've been used enough you can't pass them on with a good conscience. The only times I've ever seen components reused is if the patient tried them on during test fittings and they didn't like it, basically less than 1 hour of use, or they happened to pass away before they even got to put them on. But OP did come in with a short update around 11 days later and says, I didn't realize how much attention this was going to get. Enough that someone informed the woman my brother stole it from, and she was able to figure out what happened. She called the cops and he got arrested. I guess he was sort of trying to do the thing where he could be the hero that tracked down her leg. Please don't ask me what the fuck was going through his head. The leg was expensive enough that he is facing real criminal charges. That's all. Sorry there's not more to tell. A couple of comments on the back of that gold Magikarp says, I remember reading this originally and wondering why the hell he needed to take that leg around everywhere with him. I feel like he would have returned it way sooner if he wanted to play the hero. Potential Speech says, that's wild. I wonder why he wanted to bring it with him though. Is he obsessed with the woman he has to carry the leg with him all the time? I mean, stealing it is one thing, but carrying it around all the time. If he tried to be the hero, he could have hid it. Sounds more like a weird obsession. I don't think he wanted to give it back to be the hero. I have so many questions, but I'm glad the woman will get her leg back. This is something I never thought I would ever say. I think I'm with those comments there. It doesn't feel like he was trying to play the hero at all. I mean, why did he have to take it around everywhere with him? What was the end game in this? So many questions, but I think we still got enough info in that particular update. Holy moly. My thoughts also go to the lady that owned the leg as well. How terrifying must that have been for her? That you rely on like that just be stolen. It must be absolutely terrifying for that person. And how long has he had that leg for? It sounds like because, OP was like, you can't bring that thing with you. Like he's been carrying it around for quite a while, it felt like. And did the parents know about this leg? Why is everyone cool with this guy just carrying a leg around? But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. I'm asking you, what do you think about this situation? I imagine you're just like I am right now. I'm like, what the fuck? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story. Now, over on Twitter this morning, I had a little notification from Karen, who shared a story with us, which is titled, "My Mother Has Sticky Fingers." It does have an update as well from Competitive Oil 5227 from the r/hotels subreddit. Ooh, I like a different subreddit, I'm excited. So, my mother has sticky fingers. Today, I got a package in the post from my mother, which was odd, as she just came to visit me in Chicago over Christmas. I open it and there's a 2-foot tall, excuse the pronunciation here, Baccarat crystal vase and a post-it note that says, "Please call me Love Mum," stuck to it. I'm perplexed as I'm not a fancy crystal vase kind of guy. Well, turns out that she was staying in a fancy suite at a hotel over Christmas that had this object displayed and she took a liking to it. So much so that she took it with her. As I looked at it, I could see chunks of that white putty that people use to stick things down with, so she literally must have pried it off. And the hotel noticed, as they added a $1,200 line item to the bill that arrived. My mother apparently does not like it that much. She also removed a robe, but I guess she is okay with paying $125 for that item as it was not included in her package. So it's now my job to take this back to the hotel and explain to some poor desk person that my mother took it in error and could you please remove it from the bill. Please tell me that they will do this. If they don't, I will feel the full wrath of an old lady, as anything less than a refund will be seen as a failure on my part. So some of the comments on this one, Objective Welcome 73 says, "Call hotel, explain mum has a mental challenge and offer to bring it in. Apologize and throw your mum under the bus and hope they pity her, or pity you." Lingonberry Pryor 6896 says, "Let them know she's being evaluated for dementia. Of course, she can't stay there again." Amanda Maelstrom says, "If you call, explain and apologize up and down. Hotel management might let it go. I tend to be a lot more sympathetic to the long-suffering family members of my problem guest than said guest themselves. Just make it clear that you are mortified by your mother's behavior." But on a ranty tangent, why can't people stop stealing our decorations? We try so damn hard to make our hotels pretty and welcoming, and guests just keep ruining it. They stole my cute little bobble-headed leprechauns on St. Patrick's Day. They unscrewed the pineapples atop the luggage carts. They somehow carried off gorgeous antique model ship that was nailed to the fireplace mantle. They tried to steal a whole sofa from the conference center. I think the worst was a few weeks ago when a guest stole all of the shower curtain rings. Just the rings. They folded up the shower curtain. I'm just saying, if anyone thinks that modern hotels lack charm, there's a damn good reason why. All of our charm got freaking stolen. Ah man, people who work in hotels must have stories. If you ever on my Twitter, you see that sometimes I go out into London and visit some sites there pretty much on a yearly basis now. I always stay in like a decent-ish hotel because it's always nice to just chill and relax in these places. But they've always got like beautiful decorations. And OP talking about the long boat, the boat being nailed down on the mantelpiece. The hotel I just stayed in just before Christmas had a massive boat there, and I thought, wow, it's like a ship in a bottle kind of thing. And I thought I'd love that decoration. Obviously I wasn't going to steal it, but I thought that's a really cool decoration. And it just had me thinking when OP was talking there, that must be a daily occurrence about people just like taking shit from hotels. I wonder how often these people get away with it as well. hardcore hotel stories exciting, but OP came into the post one day later and said, to recap, my mum stole a very large and very expensive vase from a hotel suite. The hotel added it to her bill and sent it back to me to return. I took all your advice and walked into the hotel with the full intention of claiming my mum has dementia and didn't know what she was doing, and honestly with the size of the vase it seemed very plausible. I also knew to ask for the shift manager and had worried I was about to go down to felony theft. I put a paper check in my wallet just in case I ended up having to pay for something and put on my nice overcoat. The entire drive downtown I was cursing my mother. But anyone on here with an 83-year-old stereotypical Jewish mum will know that sometimes you just have to do things as the fallout from her would be worse than anything a hotel could dish out. The front desk fellow couldn't have been nicer. When I gestured to the box, he didn't even ask why I needed to see the shift manager. Just asked me to wait while he was paged. The shift manager arrives. I open the box and display the vase inside. It still had a post-it that said, "Please call me Love Mum" on it. Before I even got half my story out, he excuses himself and disappears. The desk fellow walks over and asks if I'd like to sit down and takes me to this little area with a desk and offers me a coffee. I'm now imagining that the police have been called and I'm triple cursing my mum. In walks a fellow who is the hotel general manager. I hear that Mrs. X has sent the case back. Is everything okay? I start in on the dementia story. He stops me. I first met your mother in 1982 when I started working here. There was a young boy who had climbed into the lobby fountain and was about to urinate on the statue, and your mother asked me to fish him out as she was wearing difficult shoes. I'm guessing that was you. I'm confused, but tell the fellow that was my brother and the story had become a family legend. The guy continues. She has a hobby of removing things during her stay, and we have historically just added them to her bill. Am I to take it she does not want to keep this? I'm thinking, how much money has she spent on stolen towels and other hotel crap? And all I can do is thank the fellow for looking out for her. He follows up with, when she was here last year, I worried that maybe the last time we would see her. It made my Christmas the day I saw her reservation request, which was about the nicest way anyone could say your mum is very old. I'll be checking her luggage next time. Pilot says on this, I love that this turned into a 41-year-old cat and mouse game your mum and that general manager have been playing. Very lucky he has been understanding. Gullible Toe says any hotel that keeps that same general manager for 40 plus years and is still in business seems like a really awesome place to stay. Holiday Pen says probably wasn't the general manager but worked his way up. Like first job as a bellhop in 82 at 18, is now the general manager and has been for 15 years. Which means they were a good place to work at multiple levels of the hotel's career, which is even better honestly. OP replies to that and says I left out a few of the less attractive parts of the story, like the fact that she had mailed the thing back to me in a 1990s box that once held a Sears vacuum cleaner, which had people glaring at me, and the fact that the valet guy charged me $45 to hold my car for 20 minutes to make it a little more appealing. The entire phone call I had with her when this project got dumped on me was, well, acerbic. Textile Factory says I take it she's a well-off klepto. Money excuses a lot in this world. OP says the crap that my mum always routinely gotten away with is astonishingly simply because she looks very well heeled. I used to dread school events when I was a kid because of how weird she treated people. Like she wouldn't even take the time to be demeaning to people. She just honestly didn't notice most people that were around her. Now that she is old, she totally abuses that as well. People end up doing things for her simply because she makes it obvious she expects them to, and you can't say no to old ladies. Sploot Fluff says, this makes the story even better. How many family heirlooms are from the hotel? OP says it makes me think that a large collection of decanters at her house might have a dodgy backstory. I can remember asking her once why one of them was monogrammed QE2 and her telling me that it was a gift from a ship captain. That may have been the origin, but it probably wasn't a gift the ship was aware of making. Off My Rocker says, but wait, did he take the vase back? Did your mum have to pay for it after all? Inquiring minds want to know. OP says I think they took it back. I definitely left it sitting on the table I was at. If that actually becomes a refund to her credit card is the question. Never Done, Never Ready says, this reminds me of the book Montana, 1948. A lady keeps shoplifting and the husband goes to all the stores and pays for what she steals. I hope your story is true. I don't think so, but you're a decent writer and should continue. Opie says it's very true. I omitted some of the tedious and frustrating bits and made my mum sound a lot friendlier than she is in reality. A sort of sad undertone to it all. We have to have a family meeting earlier this year because my mum has absolutely blown through money on truly ridiculous things. Excluding her purloined items, the hotel bill for her 1 week stay was still more than my entire monthly income. And it's very possible that we still have to sell her home to pay for care. Had she been even slightly less extravagant with things, she would have been able to die in bed at home with private nurses. And Barb PG asks, saying, so was it your brother or was it really you in the fountain? Your mum sounds like the best kind of character. How awesome that they remember her for so many years. Opie says it was for sure my brother. In my father's version of the story, my mum was pregnant with me at the time with swollen feet and refused to wear tennis shoes, and he had to help wedge her feet into heels. In my godmother's version, who lived in a condo above the hotel, my mum's doctor had said it was okay for her to resume drinking at the 8-month mark, though her feet were both swollen and she was not quite sober. And I think it's fair to say there was a mix of comments on this particular story. Some people saying they absolutely love the update to this people. Other people saying that, she's gotten away a whole life without consequences here. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's have one more story. Now, our next story comes from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit. Doesn't have an update as yet, from Mysterious Macaroon, who says, am I the arsehole for ordering food to go when my friend group wanted to split the check evenly? This has been an ongoing issue. I have a friends group that likes to eat nicer food. Personally for me, I am fine getting something cheap on the menu. The issue is always they want to split the check. I've had the conversation so many times that I want to pay for what I ordered. It results in an argument where I have to bend or everyone is mad at me. I also make a lot more than my friends, so it always results in them basically calling me cheap. They don't get I want to pay for my meal and that is it. Anyways, we went out to eat yesterday and they all ordered things that were around $30. I got the house salad and my total was around $12. They told the server to split the bill, and I didn't want to fight about it again. I asked the server to add onto the bill an entree and dessert for me to take home. This resulted in my bill going up to $30. They asked me what I was doing. I told them I'm getting some more food. They got upset I increased the price they needed to pay. This resulted in another argument, and they think I am a jerk. Edit. Reddit, I've done everything you suggested. I had the server take mine out and I pay for it. I have spoken to them. If I do anything that isn't splitting the bill with them, they get pissed. I'm going to start with Luna, who says, you're doing it wrong. You will only have to do this once. Since you can afford it, start ordering the most expensive items and a nice bottle of wine and smile and say, since we're splitting the bill evenly, problem solved. Mert Blake says, not the arsehole, but when you first arrive, it'd be helpful for you to tell the staff that you're on your own check. If they prefer to split the bill, they can, but you don't have to. Also, your friends kinda suck. Swift like Taylor Swift says, not the arsehole, 100% not the arsehole. I feel this in my bones. I was on vacation with some extended family and we went out for most of our meals alongside some of their friends who I did not know. Most of them 30 plus years my senior and highly successful in their fields of work. I'm talking owns a beach house wealthy. They'd basically play dumb. Oh, I dunno, what's the total come to? $300 for 6 of us. Let's just pay $50 each. It's too hard to calculate it. Meanwhile, they've ordered several bottles of wine and had at least 2 dishes each, whilst I've had 1 simple dish and 1 to 2 non-alcoholic beverages at most, sometimes just water. I had to insist that it's very simple math, but if it's too much trouble, I'm more than happy to calculate everyone's individual totals to save them the burden, they explained was their reasoning. My total would end up being 20 plus a generous 20 to 30% tip, and theirs would all be $55 plus, give or take. I always ensured my tip was not factored into their math because they'd try that too. Gaslighting is real when you're told that fussing over $30 is so silly. but their bills only went up by $3 to $10 each when they required to pay for what they actually ordered. I just hit them with, if $30 is nothing, $3 is dust, is it not? And they accepted it after that particular meal. A 2-week vacation dining out twice a day and overpaying by $30 per meal is over $800 of stolen money. No thanks. I always find it really shitty that friends as well, like if a friend said to me that I don't want to like combine bills or whatever, I want to split the bill, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely, of course. But how would you deal with this particular situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And our next story comes from just an acorn and says, I fell in love with my married neighbor and then I babysat his kids. Now I'm questioning my feelings. Okay, so first of all, I'm new to Reddit, so sorry if there are any mistakes or something. I obviously can't talk about this with any of my friends or my mum. But then I saw a Reddit post on TikTok and I thought this would be a good place to talk about this. I'm also going to post this in a couple of different places based on what came up when I googled best Reddits to post on for advice. So also sorry if this shows up multiple times. Finally, I know you're all going to judge me, but at least try to understand my side. Thanks. So I'm a 34-year-old woman, and 7 months ago I had a messy breakup with my long-term boyfriend. So I moved in with my best friend and her husband in a house we are all renting together. It was then that I met my neighbor, who I will call Kay. He helped us move our stuff into the house and I was instantly smitten. We live in the suburbs of a major city, so we both ended up taking the train into work at the same time each day. I knew Kay had a wife and kids very early on. He talked about them often and pictures of them on his lock screen, social media, etc. However, initially it started out as a very innocent, silly crush. He is handsome and funny and sweet. The first time we rode the train, he asked me about my job and seemed genuinely interested in what I was saying, which is something my ex never did and is something we fought over a lot. He's always doing things for his kids, like bringing home treats and stuff for them and staying on the phone with his older daughter the entire ride to work because she needed a pep talk before a school presentation. It was just so easy to imagine how lovely and attentive Kay would be with me because he is like that with everyone else. Kay has never said or done anything to imply that he has feelings for me yet, but we are genuinely friends by now because we talk on the train, which is about a 20-minute ride almost every weekday. I've never had trouble getting the attention of men, and with the basis we have already, I know that we could easily become something more. I also learned shortly after I developed feelings for him that his wife is someone I went to school with. I was surprised because they are the polar opposites. He's funny, she is dry. He's exciting, she is cautious. He's a little dumb, she is very smart intellectually. Looks-wise, this feels mean, but yikes. I just don't think that their personalities fit very well together at all, and I can easily see Kay getting stuck in a relationship because he's just so nice. The issue is that yesterday evening Kay knocked on my door and asked if I could watch his kids for a bit. This was of course no trouble, and I said yes right away. He told me that his wife had gotten into a car accident while away on a business trip, and because she is pregnant, he was super worried and had booked the next flight out to go see her. They don't have any family in that state currently, so he asked me to keep an eye on them for a few hours, while a family friend drove several hours to watch them at night. Now is the issue that came in. These kids were an absolute nightmare. There were 3 girls and the oldest was your typical bratty preteen times 1000. She was rude and didn't respect my authority at all, arguing with me about everything from dinner to who had to clean up to what movie she was allowed to watch. I even heard her call me a bitch under her breath a couple of times. The middle was rowdy and constantly wanted to play loud, messy games, even when I told her no. The youngest was mostly sweet and quiet on her own, but she joined in with whatever drama the middle wanted to create. It culminated in me agreeing to play hide and seek with the younger 2 and ended up getting locked out of the house. When I went back and tried to convince the oldest to let me through the back screen door, she pretended she couldn't hear me and put her headphones in. Thankfully, the family friend arrived a few minutes later and let me in, and then I went home. This makes me sad because before now, I would often dream about being a stepmom to Kay's kids one day because of how highly he would talk about them. Now I want nothing to do with them. But at the same time, this is further proof that Kay and his wife are not happy because children from a happy home do not behave like this. I just want to have a relationship with Kay, but I do not know if it's possible because his kids and I would not get along. And this is even before a potential divorce where their mother could easily get them to hate me. I really love Kay, and I know that we could have a beautiful relationship if I pursued this, but this has really shaken me. I just wish I had someone to talk to about this, but everyone in my life would judge me. Holy moly, that gave me some creepy vibes, man. It almost felt like to me she almost considers herself a part of the family, having this fantasy of being the stepmom already. Holy moly. But the first commenter on this one says, yikes, first off, children from happy homes can and often do behave that way. They're kids and they're questioning your authority. That happens. Also, lusting over a married man shows how screwy you are. Hope he sees this and stop being friends with you. You are wanting a marriage to wreck because you fell for a married man. Dude, there are plenty of single men. Go after one of them. Don't wish to be a home wrecker. Book Neat says, with all the kindness in my heart, please go to therapy. This sounds like it could indicate a serious mental health concern. You deserve to be mentally healthy, and you are not currently if this post is any indication. And one more comment from the autistic guy who says, based on your original post, which are now viral, I urge you to watch the YouTube channel for Dr. Romani, and then shares the link to Dr. Romani. MedCircle made a video with her which is an excellent breakdown on her specialization, and then shares another link and says it is notoriously difficult to treat because those with a condition are defined quite literally as a person who has an unreasonably high sense of their own importance, yet need and seek too much attention and want people to admire them. On top of that, people with this disorder may lack the ability to understand or care about the feelings of others. You sound very much like this. If you really think about it and agree, I urge you to get help. Otherwise, you may find yourself in this very situation again and again and again. What is the condition, you ask? Narcissistic personality disorder. It's got an extremely bad reputation, and those who have it often brush it off for both that reason and because, nah, it's you, not me. If that's the thought that immediately runs through your head when reading this, you probably have it, and you should probably ask about it. And then there was a comment which OP replied to, and then we'll cover the brief update after that. So the commenter said, honestly, it doesn't sound like you love him. You romanticize him and have this fantasy life in your head. In your head, you act like he would drop his wife and run away with you. You justify this belief by saying his children are wild, so it must be an unhappy home. Meanwhile, you completely ignore the fact that his wife is pregnant and he dropped everything to go to her. You say the kids do not respect your authority. It sounds like they barely know you and suddenly you're in charge. You are not their mother and will never be their mother. You think you will have a beautiful relationship with Kay if you pursued him. No, you wouldn't. He has a family that he clearly loves. Just because he is nice to you doesn't mean he wants you. I encourage you to discuss things with a professional because this isn't healthy. Opie responded saying, how do you know whether or not I love him? Are you inside my head? You can love someone before being in a relationship with them. And just like I don't know for sure that he loves me, you don't know that he doesn't. You never know until you cross that bridge. I know he wouldn't just drop everything and run away with me. There would be months and even years of divorce court, custody arrangements, etc. if he decided to leave his wife. And before the comments come in, yes, I know there's no guarantee that he will do that, but Kay is a good, honest man. If anything were to happen between us, he would absolutely leave his wife because it wouldn't be fair to either of us. And he told me he believes very strongly in fairness. That's why I'm asking. I know this could be a messy situation if anything happened. I just want to know if his kids being difficult will make things worse. If it does happen, I want to know if the potential pros outweigh the potential cons. So OP posted an update in the form of like a screenshot of a text exchange. So Kay, the husband, sent a message to OP and says, wife and the girls are okay. Thank you for watching the girls. OP responded saying, of course, anytime, let me know if there's anything else I can do. To which the husband replies with a thumbs up emoji. Comes in sometime later and shares a link to the post about I fell in love with a neighbor, the post we just read basically, and then said, is this you? Because if it is, we need to talk. I promise you that I have absolutely no interest in leaving my family for you. I'm sorry if I ever gave you the wrong idea, but I don't see you as anything more than a neighbor. I don't think we should be friends anymore. Opie responded saying, wait, can I call you? And that was the end of that. And absolutely, that is the right thing for the husband to be doing. But can you imagine being someone and coming across a post like this and knowing that it's about you? It would be absolutely terrifying. And this is a neighbor as well, so they're not automatically going to go away. And it gave me like real creepy vibes about someone like that who was living next door to you. And obviously there was a lot of comments as well with concerned about the behavior of the OP of the story. Let's face it, it's not normal behavior. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. This is from the RBI subreddit, which is titled Reddit Bureau of Investigation. It's basically using the internet to solve real world problems. It's from Doing Okay, who says, mysterious reoccurring blood splatter in our bathrooms. Is my husband lying to me? So obviously, as we get into the story, we're going to be talking about some blood. So if you do want to skip the story, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. Buckle up. This one is a weird one. Since me, 24 female, and my husband, 26 male, have moved into our apartment 8 months ago, I've been finding random blood splattering on the walls, cabinets, and floors around our toilets, and once even our bathroom mirror. They're usually tiny droplets, but sometimes they get smeared on the walls or floor. I assume they're fresh/wet. I know that the first suspect would be menstruation blood. However, I have not had a period in 2 years thanks to my birth control. I first noticed it about 3 or 4 months ago. I asked my husband about it, and the first few times he would tell me that he has no clue where it came from or how it got there. But after I would clean it up and new ones would appear, I would ask him again. Eventually he told me that sometimes when he blows his nose bleeds and it could be from that. I partially accepted that answer, however I can't recall a single time where I've blown my nose and missed the tissue so much that my snot sprayed all around me. I also mentioned to him that your nose is not supposed to bleed when you blow it and maybe he should see an ENT to see what's up, but he refuses and says it's fine. So the cycle continues. I clean up blood droplets and they reappear around our toilets in a matter of days. When I mention them, he gets frustrated and short with me and doesn't want to talk about it. He has doubled down on the "it's from blowing my nose" thing, but I still can't imagine how, 1, he blows his nose so terribly that it sprays snotty blood in every direction, and 2, his nose bleeds every day and he's not concerned about it. I recently asked him if his nose has always done that. I previously dated someone with a thin nose lining, and they once got a massive nosebleed from me doing the "got your nose" thing, so I know it's possible. But he said no, he doesn't think it's been like that always, and then pressured me to stop the conversation. Also, I would never find blood in our previous house's bathrooms, and we lived there for 4 years. I'll add that we have a regular sex life, and I've seen basically every inch of him, and there's no sign of any cuts or trauma anywhere. I'm sick of cleaning up blood, and I'm also repulsed by the idea that he doesn't know how to blow his nose without spraying bloody mucus everywhere. I'm also very concerned for him if he really has new nosebleeds every day, as a friend from high school had this happen and ignored it, and it ended up being cancer in the sinus cavities. So here I am, asking Reddit, what the heck is going on? Is he lying to me? Is it really his nose? If so, why is he suddenly bleeding every day? Why is he so defensive about it? What is going on? Edit to answer some FAQs. Yes, we have pets, but the blood shows up only bathrooms, including the guest ensuite where the pets are not allowed ever. Those rooms are closed off. No blood anywhere where the pets are allowed. I'm in control of finances and there is no money missing ever. Both our direct deposits go into our joint account. He has a credit card, but the only checking account he has is our joint one. He does have hemorrhoids, but so do I. Thanks Crohn's disease, and I've never gotten blood anywhere but the toilet. He gets medical anxiety, and this could be why he's defensive, because he should probably see a doctor. He told me that when he goes to the bathroom at night, he doesn't turn any lights on so that he doesn't wake me. I'm a light sleeper. And when he blows his nose, he doesn't see the blood since it's dark. he does have pretty bad allergies. He's had no behavioral changes since this started. Also adding a comment I made. For those suggesting drugs, I'm not dismissing you. I'm getting shamed for ignoring the comment suggesting it's drugs, but I'm still absorbing the possibility that it might be, and I need time. I also can't just willy-nilly accuse my husband of doing drugs without hard evidence, because if I did and he isn't doing drugs, then that'd put a huge strain on our relationship. If my husband accused me of shooting up in my spare time without evidence, I would be pissed. Again, I'm not ignoring you or dismissing your theories. I'm just taking my time because that's a shocking thing, and I need to process the possibility. So, if he were hiding drugs in our tiny apartment, where should I look? I checked inside the toilets, I pulled apart every drawer. Our ceilings are too high for either of us to reach. If you have experience with addiction or living with someone with addiction, please guide me to finding more evidence. Now, I can understand sort of lots of different perspectives on this as the point of that subreddit, of course. And I can understand people going down the drugs routes when I was younger, and occasionally I can always remember someone coming out of the toilet with a bleeding nose, obviously done some sort of drug. Won't mention it for YouTube purposes, of course. And as they came walking out the door, touched their nose, realized what was going on, and quickly ran back in. But I think also I can understand OP not wanting to confront this and accuse someone of taking drugs in the toilet like that, etc. Because yeah, accusing someone like that is going to put a strain, but I'd be more concerned from the health perspective in this one as well. Like you said, you knew someone who went through similar, and having nosebleeds regularly like that is going to be a concern, of course. So you'd want them to see a doctor or someone to at least get this diagnosed ASAP. And the fact that the husband is totally dismissing it, almost trying to hide it in some ways, it felt, is concerning, and you'd want to get to the bottom of it because it's an absolute worry. But a commenter says, you all have a dog that wags their tail a lot. Definitely a chance that they have an injury that bleeds when they happily hit their tail all over the room. Or could be any other animal. Opie says, so we do have pets including a dog, however I find the blood in both our master room as well as our guest ensuite bathroom. And the pets aren't allowed in the guest area. We keep them all shut off. Snailhair J says, what sort of frequency does this occur? I'd ask to see how he blows his nose, that way you know A, if it's actually from his nose, and B, if it is his nose, then you'll know how he's getting it everywhere. Opie replies saying, I rage clean the blood at least once a week, which means it all appears within a week. Also, in the 6 years we've been together, I've never seen him blow his nose aside from the one time he had a sinus infection, and it wasn't bloody, and it didn't spray everywhere. Vigilante Detective says, could he be cheating on you? Don't mean to be grim, but period sex can in fact cause blood splatter. Opie says, oof, but is he only cheating on me with girls on their periods, because it's literally every week they reappear. Also, I don't think he is cheating. Another thing that jumped out to me, and I know it's not really the point of the story, but it still crossed my mind as I was reading it, is that you seem to be clearing up this blood and the only person to be doing so, and it's happened quite frequently. He seems to know he's doing it, but you're still the only person cleaning it up. That's pretty grim in my opinion, and I think would pee me off quickly if I was going into the bathroom and having to clean up blood every so often. Especially when the person knows about it as well. Of course, there is the concern about the health issue, of course. I'm not downplaying that whatsoever. For someone to spray blood everywhere and then just walk out and think, fuck that, it's pretty disrespectful to me. But OP does update the post and says, an update some, probably very few have been waiting for. We solved the case of the bloody bathroom. Now, I know there will inevitably be some users who truly believe that my husband is discreetly hiding a drug problem despite this update and harass me about it, so I will no longer be using this account after it's posted. The professor I received about 10 DMs that offered to send pictures of what their or loved ones' blood evidence of shooting up or snorting looked like, and I was thankful that literally none of it looked like what I was finding. For those photos, the lack of gaps in our finances, no history of unexplainable personality changes, as well as the fact that I cleaned and searched every inch of our 800 square foot apartment and found nothing suspicious, solidified my conclusion that it wasn't drugs. I'm pleased to announce that my husband is just gross. Before I continue, I'd like to thank those who sent me photos and personal anecdotes of their or their loved one's drug use, and I wish you all the peace and good health in your lives. So obviously, it's been a few months since my post. In that time, I was harassed in my DMs with people calling me ignorant, some suggesting that I divorced my husband based on this wild possibility that he might be using hard drugs. Firstly, if my husband had a drug problem, I wouldn't leave him, lol. I'd want to help him. I'd love him, and addiction is a disease and he would need support. But alas, I found myself searching dark corners of cabinets and furniture crevices for secret drug hiding spots and found nothing. I sat him down for yet another conversation about the blood, and he reassured me he was having nighttime nosebleeds and promised that he would turn on the lights from then on to make sure he cleaned it up because I did not deserve the burden of doing so for him. He lived up to his promise, and after that conversation I noticed he was turning the light on when he went to blow his nose at night, and the blood drops stopped appearing. Fast forward to 2 weeks ago. I was on Instagram and came across a reel that was titled, "Signs You're Using Your Nasal Spray Wrong." The very first sign was new, unrelenting nosebleeds. The metaphorical light bulb over my head illuminated, as I remembered that since we moved to a new part of the state, my husband's allergies have been worse and he started taking Flonase to control it. The time of the blood appearing was about a week and a half after he started taking the nasal spray. I know this because he uses my prescription ever since Flonase came out, with a pill version that I like better. As soon as I came home, I showed him the video I saw, which also demonstrated how to properly use nasal sprays. You have to tilt it, not shoot it straight up. He took a week off the Flonase to reset his sinuses, and last week started using it again, the correct way, and holy cow, he stopped snoring, his voice sounds different, his nose stopped whistling, and thank the Lord, he stopped having midnight nosebleeds. No more blood, but also no more paranoia on my part, and he can properly breathe out of his nose for the first time we moved here. You may be wondering why he didn't see a doctor when the nosebleeds started. It's because we are poor and he has medical anxiety. But yeah, case solved. And there was a lot of people talking about him not clearing up the blood initially, etc. Some people thinking that he might just be hiding the drugs, etc. Other people talking about the Reddit comments on the original post and jumping to conclusions. One commenter saying, "Divorce your husband, go no contact with all your friends, call CPS on every single one of your neighbors." And then someone replies saying, "Start a fuck you binder on your mother-in-law." But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What did you suspect the issue might be? Be honest. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And our next story comes from No Rice 3484 from the Am I Wrong subreddit and says, "My mother-in-law wants to move in." Ooh, shiver. "My 31 male, wife's 32 female mother wants to move in with us. My wife bought a single wide for her and her mother. 3 brothers, all younger, and sister, younger too, back when she was 20-ish. Nothing special, just a place for them all to live where the lot space was being rented. Fast forward to now, and we finally bought our own place for her, I, and our newborn. We've been living alone together for about 3 months now, and it's been heaven. Her sister moved out of the home 2 years ago and rents an apartment. One of her brothers also moved out and lives in government housing with his partner and 2 kids. Her other brothers are 24 and 27. They stayed in that single wide my wife had bought. A couple of days ago, the landlord informed them that they needed to move out because he was going to build apartments on the lot. They have 2.5 months to move. My mother-in-law has been asking my wife that she wants to move in with us. The house is in my name due to a credit issue when we purchased the home. Someone in her family used her credit cards and ruined my wife's credit. My wife doesn't want to tell her mum no, but we both agree we don't want her moving in for many reasons. Primarily because we just moved in and have a strong relationship and feel her mother would affect that. Plus, I like walking around in my underwear if I please, as it's our home. She's also super lazy, dirty, a slob, and I know she will never leave. I told my wife that I have no problem telling her that she's not moving in. Am I the arsehole for not allowing her a place to live? Now my first thought is, can't she just relocate the single wide? I'm not clued up on these kind of things, but I'm sure that's possible, right? I mean, it might be expensive, but you've given us a small little indication of what it would be like living with mother-in-law, and absolutely, you said she won't leave, so do not let her move in under any circumstance, and your wife needs to back you up on this. This is her mother after all. But Snoo Word says you can be the mean person and tell mother-in-law should not be moving into your home. Wife needs to grow a spine and lock down her credit. If anyone else uses her credit, a police report should be filed. Tell wife, no more freeloaders allowed to take advantage. Chad Martigan says, the wife needs to understand that OP married her and not her mother, and that it would be an incredibly weird dynamic for him to provide for some 50 to 55-year-old woman he's not married to. Also, let's not gloss over the fact that her family has committed a crime and stolen from the wife/OP. I wouldn't be letting any of them stay until someone owns up to what happened. It's usually a parent who does something like this, and it would be absolute insanity to invite her into your home if that's the case. Satellite Beach says, don't do it. You are absolutely right. This will have a profound effect on you and your marriage. If your wife can't stand up to her mother right now and give her a firm hell no, then you're doomed to be living in a house where your mother-in-law is in charge. You have a new house with a baby and a wife you love. Don't throw it away by bringing in the mother-in-law. She needs to figure out her own life. His impending boldness says, as everyone else has said, be the bad guy. Keep it short, kind, and polite. No. I like being with just wife and baby, thank you. Don't say anything bad about her and don't give detailed reasons she can argue against. Don't let her stay for even a short while. One more comment from Witchvert, who says, after having a home purchased for them, how have they not managed to save money to care for themselves? A family sound like leeches. It's going to be hard for your wife to say no, and it puts you in a bad spot, but protect her. She more than likely views they're using her and needing her as love. Speaking from personal experience. OP comes back into the post and says, I posted about a month and a half ago how my wife and I bought our first house, and my mother-in-law showing up one day saying she's staying the night while I was at work. Night shift. I came home to her sleeping on my couch. Quick recap. I discussed with the wife and she didn't feel comfortable kicking her out if she tried again, but had no problem with me kicking her to the curb. Well, she came back about 2 weeks after while I was at work and announced she was staying the night again. Only this time, she brought her mother along. Didn't ask permission, didn't say anything, just showed up. Well, that morning I came home, pissed, because she came over unannounced while I was away, and just made herself at home on my couch again. To top it off, they had a family birthday dinner planned that same evening that they wanted to do at my house, but my wife had already said no. Well, I walked in and found 3 big pots of food that had been cooking overnight, which my wife didn't notice because they began cooking after she went to bed. One reason I knew they were planning on having their party there too was because the way my driveway is set up. It's last car in has to be first car out, and she parked in my driveway with room for me to come in behind instead of on the street, meaning she planned on staying for a good while after I got home from work. I walked in and the mother-in-law, all innocent, says, "Good morning," while again sleeping on my couch. I was pissed but didn't want to blow up, so the first thing I said was, "What do you think this is, a hotel? What's with the sleepover?" To which she says, "It's because it's a lot more comfortable here than in our apartment," shares with 3 adult sons. I proceeded to make myself some dinner, turning on all the lights in our open space kitchen living room area and pouring myself a drink to make her as uncomfortable as possible. I sat there eating and drinking my drink. Remember, this is my after work time, 6 AM, while she laid on the couch visibly looking more and more uncomfortable. After I finished, I grabbed a bunch of dirty dishes she had left, threw them in the sink and went over to have a conversation with her. I told her I never wanted her spending the night. This wasn't a hotel, and to not be coming over to make a mess in my kitchen. She could visit her grandkids and daughter whenever she wanted, but could not spend the night and to respect my house. I then went into my bedroom where I heard her and her mother get up, pack their shit and get out. After that, they began a war against me, telling my wife that I kicked them out, told them to never come around and that they weren't allowed to see our kids. They went on a weak tirade to my wife, trying to convince her to leave me. She went so far as to tell my wife, who we've been dating and married for a combined 12 years, that if she didn't leave me, I would end up being abusive and hit her. What the fuck? To top it off, I found out they actually had their bags already waiting in their car, so they were planning on staying with us for 3 months. It's been a month now, and I have to say, it was so worth it. My in-law has come over 2 times since then, spending no more than 3 hours combined. Best part is she's scared of me right now that I might kick her out again. It's been paradise. Ever since she told my wife all those lies, her true colors came out and my wife's eyes were open to how manipulative mother-in-law is. I mean, my wife was just in the other room and she already knew what I was going to tell her mum. She heard every word. We just spent Christmas with my family but came home early to our home and enjoyed family time with just our kids, and it was the best Christmas we've had in a long time. So there were some relevant comments after that. 4BigKid says, so are we talking mother-in-law plus your wife's grandma? So weird as to their expectations. Good on you for drawing the line. Is it a cultural thing they expected to live in your house? Opie says, it is a weird situation. Trying to make a long story short, my wife bought a single wide trailer when she was just 18 for her and her entire family to live. All they had to do was pay rent on the lot. My wife's mum, grandma, 3 bros and 1 sis lived there. The lot they were renting got sold, so they were trying to mooch off my wife again by coming to live here rent-free. Pineapple Scientist says, congrats. Did you or your wife have a conversation with your mother-in-law explaining that she can't stay over prior to the, what do you think, this is a hotel? I read your last post and then this one, and it feels like I missed something in the middle. It escalated quickly, but I'm glad it worked out in the end. Opie says, lol, there was no sit-down conversation prior. My wife said she would, but I told her that I could do it because I didn't want to mess up their relationship. I knew mother-in-law would get extremely butthurt, and trust me, I was very respectful when I laid down the law, even though I was fuming. I told her, come literally whenever you want. Morning, noon, evening, I don't care, but there will be no spending the night. No coming over and making a mess in our kitchen. She took what I said and let her imagination run wild. And the kitchen thing, it wasn't like she was coming over and making us dinner. It's that she was going into our fridge and making herself meals and leaving everything out. Eggs, cheese, everything and anything. Villain 911 says, well handled. I'm hoping they don't get through to your wife and turn her against you. Things like that unfortunately happen far more often than they should. Opie says, I've heard the same thing from a lot of people. The good thing is, wife eyes were open to how much of a leech her mum is. It's a long story, but she's been mooching off of her kids for years. Dad died when the kids were young, so a lot of government help meant she never had to work. And one more comment which says, what happened to the single wide trailer your wife bought? Opie says my wife ended up signing it over to her mum so she could sell it and keep the money. It's not worth much at this point, maybe like 10k. I was quite surprised by some of the comments below that one as well about how often this kind of thing happens, that their mother just sort of mother or parent with it or some relative just suddenly turning up and slowly trying to move in the house. Because I had to do a double take when I first read that grandma suddenly turned up as well. I was like, what the fuck? Where did grandma come from? So how long would it be before some of the boys started following in as well? And of course, I think wife needs to take some serious stepping back from that situation. It doesn't sound healthy at all. It sounds like she could quite easily be manipulated once again by mother-in-law. But I think fair play to OP for stepping in when they did and, you know, setting that boundary firmly. When OP mentioned though about, you know, not wanting to damage the relationship between mother-in-law and wife, I was kind of like, does that really matter in some ways? I get it in some ways, but in others I'm like, wow, she just seems like a manipulative, not very nice person anyway. And you wonder how much wife has grown up around this kind of behavior, like it's sort of like been normalized for her, so it's hard to escape. Obviously a lot of people in the comments also saying that, you know, wife needs to grow a spine, etc, etc, but I always look at it from that point of like, if you've grown up and it's been normalized to a point, it's got to be difficult to break, right? Not excusing it, but it's got to be quite difficult. But anyway, what do you guys make of this situation? I'm not sure if that's quite concluded as yet. We shall see in the future. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. And I'll start off by saying our next story is not safe for work. It does contain talk of kinks, let's just say. So as always, if you do want to skip it, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along a timeline below. Thank you. And now let's get started. This is from Throwaway Pick Megaf, who says, am I the arsehole? 25 male for telling my girlfriend 24 female. I'd rather break up than do something in bed. Oh boy. We've been together since senior year of college and have talked about marriage. We're not exactly sexually adventurous, just normal stuff, but we've been trying a few more things lately. She said she really wants to try pegging. She said, we've already done anal, so I shouldn't be too opposed, except we only did it because she wanted. I can take it or leave it. I told her that I would never agree to pegging and she'll just have to forget about it. She bought a strap-on to try to convince me it wasn't that big of a deal. No kink shaming, but I have no interest and don't want to try. She said that if I don't do it, she'll never be able to experience it. I half-jokingly told her if she keeps pushing it, she'll be free to experience it with whoever she wants. She started to cry. Should I just do it because she wants, or should she respect my decision and drop it? Edit, a bit of context. We're both raised in evangelical churches and have since left. What's adventurous to us is pretty tame to many. It's also why we have difficulty discussing consent and boundaries. It's an absolute no from me. She shouldn't be pressuring you into doing something sexually that you don't want to do. You said this is a no for you, but to buy it, that you express you're not interested, it sounded quite manipulative to me. But Incognito says, not the arsehole, your girlfriend shouldn't be trying to pressure you into doing any sexual acts you don't want to do. Most of us women are very aware of issues with consent. Seems your girlfriend has hopefully temporarily forgotten about it. Please remind her, and if she doesn't drop it, drop her. Craft Intelligence says not the arsehole, absolutely not the arsehole. To pressure someone into doing something sexually they don't want to do is such an absolute hard no, and she is applying pressure. By purchasing it, she's hoping that you'll feel bad she spent money and just give in. That's not cool. Ask her genuinely if she or any of her girlfriends have ever felt pressured into doing something they didn't want to do. Guarantee that 99% of them will have, and she'll hopefully apologize for her shit behavior. It's fair enough to be curious and to ask to explore, but to guilt pressure someone is absolute bull. I really hate Fish says not the arsehole, fucking hell. Her pressuring you like this and buying the equipment like it's already a done deal is awful. It sounds like you guys need to slow down and talk about boundaries in your relationship. Just because one person is okay with something, that doesn't mean the other person is okay with the same thing. If it's so important to her and is crossing your boundaries, you're just not compatible. If you want to stay together and work it out, you need to have a long talk about what you like and don't like and where your limits are, and agree to respect those limits. Throwaway says, I would say leave her, to be honest. She sounds manipulative. I don't know her as a person, but people go to that extent to get what they want. Usually 9 times out of 10, crying because other people don't do what you want, they're manipulative in many other ways. This relationship either won't last or you'll be married and only stay for the kids, or people enabling her manipulative tendencies. I'm a teenager, and even I see through that shit. So OP does come in with an update and says thank you to everyone that took the time to comment and share advice. It really helped me. Brief summary from the original. My girlfriend tried pressuring me into letting her peg me. We got into a huge fight. Here's the update. We broke up. Nah, joking. She's next to me on the couch bugging me to rub her feet. I guess she hasn't learned anything about consent. The real update is positive, especially for our relationship. A lot has happened. I took advice from the comments to have a conversation about boundaries, consent, and focusing on things we are both comfortable exploring. She agreed it was a good idea. We were really naive and unprepared for all of this. We thought we could figure it out as we went. She asked if I was willing to share the websites I was finding this info so she could read them too. I told her that I posted it on Reddit. Actually, lucky I did, since someone made a TikTok about my post that she saw, and she probably didn't want to see it. The comments were universally against her. She asked me to share her anyway. She read the post and some of the comments. She said she knew she was wrong, but was a little surprised by how negatively people reacted to her. I asked why she cried, and it was because she was upset. I would even joke about breaking up. She wasn't trying to manipulate me by crying. She thought we were just having a conversation. I told her she wasn't listening to me and how uncomfortable I was. I was trying to find an exit ramp for the conversation, not seriously talking about breaking up. I also apologized because I was wrong to joke like that. She admitted she wasn't sensitive to my boundaries and was just focused on what she wanted. She recognized that behavior is really toxic, and she would think I was an ass. Yes, that's a pun. If I kept ignoring her boundaries. She also apologized for buying the toy and agreed it was manipulative. One commenter suggested a yes, no, maybe list. This advice has made a world of difference. We found some examples that helped us create our own. We agreed to be honest, no judgment, and to not pressure the other person on anything they put no or maybe on. We agreed the list was just for discussion. It didn't imply consent. We would discuss everything and we're free to change our minds at any time. If you're wondering, I marked pegging as a no for me and she checked yes. She will not be bringing it up again unless I change my response, but I'm glad she was honest. There is still some awkwardness surrounding sex, enjoying it, exploring it, and even talking about it. We're giving each other grace and allowing for mistakes and misunderstandings. There are plenty of things we're both willing to do right now, not to mention just regular weekday sex is pretty great. The rest of the update is about our future, not really related to the original post. When we're having our discussions about sex and communication, we also started talking about our relationship with each other, Jesus, and church. We realized we missed belonging to a church community but wanted to find one that fits our values, not our parents. We found a nice church. My family would call it Church Light. We've just started going and they are very welcoming and the people are very nice and accepting. One of the reasons we joined was we wanted to be married in a church. That's right, we're engaged. We're already thinking of marriage, but these last few months we've really solidified our commitment to each other and our future together. She told her parents and they didn't give us their blessing. We were expecting that. Her parents are very traditional. They won't visit us because we live together and made it clear the last time we visited them, they don't approve of us and our views. My fiance, girlfriend at the time, told her sister she was on birth control and also said they should get the HPV vaccine. They're adults and can make their own choices, but her parents don't see it that way. That caused a shitstorm. We weren't invited to Christmas. We told her parents we will invite them to the wedding and it's their decision to attend or not. The siblings are happy for us and said they will be at the wedding. My parents were happy. They aren't strict about things, although I can't deny the fact I'm their son, not daughter, plays a part in it. My mum just wants us to have kids so she can be a grandmother. I know my fiance wanted her mum to be involved in the wedding planning, dress shopping and all that, and for her dad to give her away. She's really disappointed and hoping they will change their minds, but we're not expecting them to. We aren't going to have a big wedding since we're paying for it all, but it will be what we want and is for us, not anyone else. Ah man, Reddit is absolutely wild sometimes. I'm glad that communication, that they are talking about, consent and boundaries and they've got this list that's acceptable for them, but it really threw me out, I gotta be honest, when we went from pegging to we've joined a new church. I was like, whoa. Not that people who are into pegging can't be into church, absolutely not, that's not what I'm saying, but it did throw me. Reddit comments are always sort of wild, but one did absolutely throw me off. Cheeseball Fondue says, yes, the classic heartwarming pegging story. To which Dusty Daisy replied saying, get strapped in for a fun ride. But anyway, what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And our next story comes from Familiar Kinfolk 629 and says, sister-in-law thinks her wedding commitments are more important than my dying mother's cancer test results. My 42 female sister-in-law, 38 female, is getting married. Had very little contact with us before the wedding. Any contact initiated has been us visiting my husband's 45 male family, which is out of state, and has a 14 to 16 hour drive each way. I've always gotten along with my sister-in-law, but this was a whole side of her that my husband has told me about, but I had never actually seen. My mother has been diagnosed with cancer, and has had to have many treatments, including surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. Before all of these treatments, we had to wait on a test to determine which stage of cancer she was in. When we were waiting on my mother's cancer test results, we would know in 3 days, and the cancer test results could be absolutely devastating and could let us know how long my mother had to live. Every day seemed like an eternity. During this time, my sister-in-law called my husband and I to ask us exactly which role we and our children would have in her wedding. She knew exactly what position we were in, and we told her on the phone call repeatedly what was happening. At this point, how long we could stay and what we could do would be determined by my mother's test results. Since we still had many months left before my sister-in-law's wedding, we did not know if we would have to be planning my mother's funeral at this point. We only had 3 days before we would know a lot more to give her an accurate answer. This was also the first and only time she's ever called us in 15 years of our marriage. She began asking us exactly what we would be doing at our wedding, what day we would be there, and how long we could stay. My husband and I repeatedly told her there's no way we could know during this phone call what we would be capable of doing 7 months from then, and would have a better idea once we got the test results. We repeatedly told her that that would take 3 days. During this phone call, she began getting upset and angry with us, using her sassiest and grainiest Valley Girl voice to tell us what she needed to know by tomorrow, what we could do during the reception, and what our children could do during the reception. I do not know how to go forward with this woman after this interaction. She insisted on knowing by the next day and began getting very angry with us. We were really calm and kept trying to calmly explain again the position we were in, as I couldn't fathom that she would have such an attitude of insistence in the situation we were in. She began insisting that she needed our children and us to help her set up chairs, serve people's food, and clean up after the reception. Overall, she wanted to know immediately what roles we could play in giving her free labor-intensive roles at her discretion, so she could save money on their wedding. Mind you, we would be driving 16 hours to come serve her, while my mother needed me for help after having been diagnosed with cancer. I still would have gone to a wedding before this phone call and figured out how to help my mother as well, if my mother's stage of cancer wasn't as severe. It turned out my mother's cancer has since spread to her bones, and she is not in good shape. After the interaction, I do not want to see her or be around her at all. I'm not even sure that I want my children around her either. My husband began getting angry with her and eventually raised his voice a bit and told her that my mother could die, which brought me to tears during this phone call. My children and I have all been traumatized by my mother's diagnosis and now this. Having sheer mental exhaustion, I cannot gather my thoughts to think of what to do in this situation. Any advice will be greatly appreciated, and I ask you please to be kind since this is very traumatic for my family and I. Thank you. Edit, and thank you so much for all the support and advice. It's helped me to feel so much more level-headed and sure of my decision going forward. I will not be attending the wedding, and neither will my kids. Thinking about the issues at hand, I recently remembered not being able to go to a college graduation ceremony due to medical issues for my mum, and she sent a card to my husband thanking him for his support because he was able to make it, just barely. She never sent him or I anything in the mail ever before. It seemed to be an underhanded remark. Thinking back on things even more, there have been times she allowed her niece and nephew she was babysitting to throw things at our family when we had just came into his in-laws' house after a long trip, and allowed them to say some things to us that I've never heard come out of a kid's mouth before. I have obviously overlooked many things now I think about. And we can already see that OP's got the advice of the comments and seems to be taking that on board, which we'll cover a few of those comments in a moment. But yeah, this just doesn't seem like someone that I would like to call family either. I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes, OP, and imagine someone came up to me when one of my family members was going through their cancer diagnosis and treatment, etc., and I'd be telling them to fuck right off. I understand that their wedding is important to them, but to have no empathy for your situation and what you're going through, what your family is going through, what your mother's going through is just unforgivable for me. Dealing with cancer and care and the treatments, and I know it's different for different types of cancers, but it is absolutely draining for everyone around it as well. Not just physically helping with the appointments and the care, etc., but mentally as well. With my dad particularly, I can remember being absolutely exhausted, always thinking about what he might be worried about. So for her to treat you this way is absolutely unforgivable. I wouldn't be going to that wedding at all, I can tell you that right now. But even without the diagnosis and things like that, and I know it's not the point of the story, but she sounds like she's going to treat you and your family like crap anyway for free labor serving people at her wedding. I mean, what the hell? OP, you deserve so much better. I wish your mother, you, and your family all the best. But we'll cover that update in a few of those comments. So EMR says, good God, she sounds self-centered and awful. If you even go to this wedding, which who could blame you if you didn't, your kids aren't free labor for her. OP says, okay, so I'm not alone in my feelings of shock at her behavior. This is good to know. My children will not be serving guests or used as free labor. I'm sure of that. I do not want to go to the monster-in-law's wedding at all. Primary criticism replies to OP and says at this point I'd send her a text or an email like this. Sister-in-law, I've had a few days to think about it, and I've decided I'm not coming to your wedding. Your behavior and lack of compassion towards my mother's health issues and her dying made me realize I don't like you. I don't actually want to see you or support you. I'd wish you the best, but I'd be lying. I'm going to block you because I don't want your selfishness to make my mother dying harder on me or my kids. Much Delivery says, I honestly wouldn't go. Save yourself and your family the stress. If she isn't understanding about your situation, she does not deserve your time and help. Use the time you have with your mum and make memories for you and your family. At the end of the day, those memories will make the grief better once she's gone, and none can take those away from you. Looking back, I wish I had made more memories with my family members who passed away. Regret is ugly and doesn't go away. I'm honestly sorry about your mum. I hope you find peace and time with your mum. OP responds and says, my thoughts exactly. We were thinking of just having my husband go, since it's his sister. This has permanently derailed my relationship with his sister. I can't believe I have to even think about this right now. And one more comment from Blame the Larder, who says, first, I'm very sorry about the news of your mother's health. Second, sister-in-law is acting horrible, and I'm sorry that you have to deal with it. Her behavior is abhorrent at best. Based on your post, her actions seem somewhat pushy and predatory. I'm icked out. Personally, this would be it for me. Husband could deal with his sister any way he wants, but she wouldn't be around me, my children, or in my house. Her behavior indicates she doesn't care about any of you. To her, you don't exist as people. You are just set pieces in the stage production of her life. OP says, you are so very accurate. Wow, you hit the nail on the head 100%. I worry she's a psychopath at this point. I've learned to listen to my husband more. He tried to tell me in the past and I didn't get it. So OP did come back into the post to update and says, after finding out that my sister-in-law was not going to wait 2 more days for my mother's cancer results, I decided not to go to a wedding with my children. My husband is welcome to go if he would like to. He's also going to buy her a present. Well, my mother is dying and going downhill very quickly. I've now found out that my sister-in-law and her future husband has blocked not only my husband and I, but also our children, 15 male, 12 female, on social media. There was no explanation for this, and my main concern at this point is her desire to come visit us across state lines. She's invited herself and her family, extremely unruly children included, to our home repeatedly. My husband has so far been pretty agreeable, at least temporarily, so as to avoid any arguments. Not only will I never have this woman in my home, I'm worried she's going to try to come to my mother's funeral when my mother dies soon. I do not want to see her, her family, and I do not want her to have any contact with my children. I'm very exhausted right now and could just use some top tips on next steps. Thank you so much in advance. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? What advice would you give to OP? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story, which comes from the Server Life subreddit from No Luck in Love, who says, I just quit mid-shift. It does come with an update as well. I've been a server at this restaurant basically since it started 2 years ago. I've given it my 110% and it wasn't enough. I was supposed to be a server only, but I was basically a manager without getting paid. I always covered when someone didn't show up. I even had days where I had to work as the only server/bartender because they didn't have enough staff. Then he started hiring way too many people and I was consistently stuck with the worst shifts. I still made money, but come on, I was there when no one else was. Then everyone started quitting again. I was the only employee there that had been with them since the start of everyone else left. So it was me and a girl I had trained about a year ago. We're the oldest servers there, and there was a chef who's been with us for 8 months. The only staff he had managed to consistently keep. The boss came in furious and started berating us like he was doing us a favor, keeping the place open when we had to kiss his feet because of it. He started thanking us for being with him the longest, to saying we were shit at our job. Then he promoted a new server who, to that day, a couple of minutes before he came in, was asking me how to make some drinks and needed help closing a tab. That was the last straw. I just stood up and quit. I still can't believe it. So there were some relevant comments on this one. Someone said either the boss is under extreme distress and projecting it out on you guys, or boss is really bad at their job. OP says he's just a rich dude who's never there. It probably hurt his ego that 90% of his staff quit in the last 3 weeks. It's the only explanation I can think of. But thank you. I do hope what comes next is better. OP shares a bit about how they feel. They say, I know. I thought I would regret it, but I still haven't. Instead, I feel relieved. Thank you. Someone asks if the new person who was recently promoted is like friends or related to the manager in any way. OP says yeah, she is friends with the owner. We all suspect they had something more going on though. Someone asks OP, did you get the money you're owed for working? OP says nope, that's the only thing I'm worried about. They pay every week on Wednesday. Tips are mostly in credit cards, so they pay that and the hourly wage in check. So right now, the only thing I can do is wait for Wednesday. Someone says, what are they going to do without you? OP says yes, they're closed for this week, or at least until they manage to get more people with experience. Turns out they were counting on me to train the new servers, because their new supervisor doesn't know anything about how the restaurant works. Also, the other 2 people who were there with me quit today too. Yeah, at the very least I get the satisfaction that he had to close for a few days after I left. I know he must be livid right now because of it, so at least I get that since I know he's not going to change. So OP did come back in to update the post and says, I made a post last week about quitting mid-shift. It turns out shit hit the fan, so I thought I'll update you guys. I walked out after he berated me and my 2 co-workers who were the only people that knew what they were doing. After I walked out, the other server I trained quit after her shift was over. That left them with their new supervisor who didn't know shit and is rude to customers, and her friend who had started that same day. They decided to close for a few weeks since they now didn't have servers or anyone to train them. I was the one who trained 95% of the servers that worked there. Most of them it was their first job, and when they left my hands they found better jobs, so I'm proud of that. Come Wednesday when I was supposed to pick up my check, they were closed, so I called them. Didn't pick up the first 3 times. Sent a text, they didn't reply until late at night that we should come to the restaurant Thursday. On Thursday he told us that there was money missing from last week and he wouldn't pay us until he knew what happened to the money and threatened to go to the police. We said he should check the security cameras and we didn't take anything. Still, he didn't want to pay us and told us to wait till Friday, so we did. Friday he made us wait in his office for an hour before telling us to come to the restaurant because he was there. We went to the restaurant where he was talking to his new staff. There he berated us again in front of his new staff, saying we didn't manage to close him down because he already had new employees. I said, seems to me like you are closed, but okay. He was mad and talked shit for a while before giving us our checks and threatening to sue because we closed him down for a few weeks. The irony. As of now, he still hasn't done anything, but I guess I will update if something does happen. I already contacted a lawyer just in case this all keeps going to shit. Someone questions OP and said, did you say anything? OP said I wanted to say a lot of things, but just standing there and looking like I didn't care made him even madder. He just kept raising his voice and I just smiled, enjoying his distress. Someone says he's just making empty threats. OP says yeah, that's what I think too. I'm sure he wouldn't do anything. If he wants it to get ugly, I know a lot of shit about that place, so if I'm going down, he's going with me. Someone says no way the new people are going to last long, right? OP says I could see in their faces they weren't going to last long. The manager just hid in the kitchen. The new employees were there speechless. I was listening and acting like I didn't care and he was just about to explode. If they didn't quit after that, I wish them luck. Someone says depending on your state, he legally could have been required to pay you in 24 hours and you could escalate this. OP says I already have my money. If I can just forget about him and move on, I'd prefer to do that. He's a rich dude with a lot of influence around here, so I prefer not to deal with him anymore. What an idiot. So you get some new staff members and then you start talking shit to your old employees in front of them. Wow, I can just see that business going down fast. There was a comment below this one who says, remember that episode of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmare, Amy's Bakery? Just jumping in here, if you haven't seen that, check it out on YouTube if you can find it. They had this giant restaurant with what looks like good equipment, but Amy, the chef, couldn't cook, and her husband didn't know how to run a restaurant, but they must have dumped 6 figures into this operation. I think people were saying he was part of some sort of mafia and was using shady money in an attempt to launder some of it as a restaurant. The OP's boss sounds like that. like he made his money elsewhere and decided he was going to throw some good money into a restaurant. And, you know, as I was reading that, I could actually picture that happening. Not the money laundering side of things, but just like the running the restaurant without any clue. I mean, that is pretty much the gist of Gordon Ramsay's kitchen nightmares anyway. Gordon comes in, shouts at the boss a bit, and hopefully it might work out. Sometimes it doesn't. I do love to watch it. We used to get a lot of like servers stories on these subreddits. You don't see them so much anymore. And I used to love the comments that we get because quite a few people have had jobs as servers at some point, and hearing their experience as well, you know, was just absolutely crazy sometimes, dealing with some of these shitty customers, shitty bosses. It's wild, man. But now I'm going to turn this story to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story from Beautiful Explorer 363 from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit. Doesn't have an update as yet, but says, am I the arsehole for picking a revealing bridesmaid's dress in order to get one of my bridesmaids to drop? So this has been a long thing coming. My soon-to-be husband has a sister, let's call her Mia. Now Mia and I do not click very well. I am polite, but I wouldn't say we were friends. I felt I was forced by his family to make her a bridesmaid or she will be sad. I'm going to be blunt. Mia is fat and very insecure about it. This has led to bridesmaid dresses shopping to be a nightmare. Never could find something she wants and all the other bridesmaids and me liking it. So I gave everyone two options to vote on. Option 1 was getting a dress that can be styled multiple ways, or picking from a collection so everyone matches but they will need to pay for it. Option 2 was I will buy everyone's dress but I choose the dress and my decision is final. My 5 bridesmaids voted and option 2 won. So I picked out a blue strapless dress with a mini slit. I really like it and I knew Mia would have an issue with it. I sent a picture to all the bridesmaids and confirming the right size before I ordered it. This is where it blew up. Mia was pissed I picked a revealing dress. This resulted in an argument where she thinks I'm a huge jerk, and I told her she can step down if she has issues with the dress. She tried to get family on her side, but everyone knows I gave them the options and had watched me struggle to find something everyone wants. Edit. She voted for the option where I pay for the dress. I truly didn't ask her since her and mother-in-law announced she was one of my bridesmaids at a family gathering. The only way to keep the peace with the whole family was basically giving her what she wanted. I also have gone to 4 different shops to find a dress for everyone. And we're starting the comments with Certain Chemistry, who says, going against the grain, I say not the arsehole. The arsehole here is mother-in-law and Mia. Mother-in-law for announcing Mia as a bridesmaid, Mia for being difficult. I'm fat and if I don't fit the same dress as everyone else, I'd have voted for buying my own from a collection. Mia could still ask for this if you're willing to compromise again. Your fiance has your back. Sometimes the bridesmaids wear a dress they wouldn't have picked out because they respect the bride's choice. Handicap Princess says, not the arsehole, quotes the options and then says, you offered options. She declined them. Her participation in your wedding is optional. One could say, undesired. Everyone knows by now it is typical for a bride to choose how she'd like her bridesmaids to appear. Mia doesn't get to override the preference of everyone else simply because she is insecure with her body type. Quick Get in the TARDIS says, everyone sucks here. Your mother-in-law for trying to shoehorn Mia as a bridesmaid and you for not having the backbone to say that you will not have Mia as a bridesmaid, but would be thrilled to find a role for her elsewhere in the wedding, i.e. doing a reading or something just as important. Neither of you are doing Mia any favors by coddling her instead of forcing the crucial, not everything is going to go your way, lesson from the start. And one more comment from Panda Enthusiast 89 who says, everyone sucks here. Mia sounds difficult, but if you didn't want her to be a bridesmaid, you just shouldn't have made her one. There were a million diplomatic ways to do it. I have a limited number of spots for bridesmaids and I want the women closest to me to fill those spots, but I'm excited to have you as a guest at my wedding and to get to know you better would have done the job nicely. Or you could have even told her during the dress shopping process that a refusal to agree on anything was making things difficult and it may be better if she just attended as a guest and could then wear what she wants. Your approach, however, is pretty passive-aggressive. Now, what do you guys make of this situation? Do you think as a you're the arsehole, everyone sucks here, not the arsehole? What would you do in that situation? Always love to know your thoughts. And our next story comes from ABK 1998 and says, am I the arsehole for not wanting to apologize for calling out my aunts at a wedding? I, 26 female, have been with my partner, 27 female, for 5 years, and we're getting married next year. Overall, the wedding planning has gone pretty smoothly until now. For context, there is a large age gap in my family when it comes to the grandchildren on my mother's side. My dad's an only child. My mother had me in her 20s and my 2 aunts waited till they're in their late 30s to have kids, so I've just been more of an extra aunt to a lot of my cousins, as there's about 4 of them, all between 6 and 10, all girls, except for my cousin Kate, 25 female, who is the daughter of my mother's older brother. Now, I love my family, I do, but my aunts have always been the kind of parents who can never say no to their precious children, and that has resulted in them being spoiled brats. Over the last decade, there has not been one family event that hasn't been ruined in some capacity by a child having a temper tantrum over something stupid. In the last year alone, we've had tantrums over not wanting to leave a party even though the party place was closing, not having the correct flavor of strawberry ice cream at our grandfather's 85th birthday, or just getting a pack of hair bows that didn't match each other's, and many others that, to be honest, the reason why are so stupid they feel made up. And these tantrums are bad, like the full screaming, pounding the floor, and enough tears to water a field until their mothers give in to their demands. Husbands are just real walkovers, to be honest, and let their wives deal with the kids. It took a long time to even bring my partner to one of our many family events just because I always knew these tantrums were going to happen. I didn't want to scare her away. I work with kids, so I know this is beyond not normal behavior of kids, and I know the lack of discipline is to blame. But I've never been in the position to call it out because in my family, it's very much if you don't have kids, your opinion of how to raise them doesn't count. But as the kids have gotten older, it's gotten so much worse. Now, onto the wedding planning. We're not having a large wedding because neither of us want it. Between our family members we want there and our friends, it's just over 100 people. My partner's family has no kids under 16, and when the idea of having a child-free wedding came up, it was clear my partner liked the idea of no one under 16, and to be honest, I was happy with it, as well as our dogs were going to fill the roles of ring bearer and flower girl anyway, and we both knew there was going to be at least one tantrum, and neither of us wanted to subject our friends and her family to those. My parents and grandparents agreed that it would be nice to have no kids for a change, and with that, we sent the invitations out. Not long after the invitations went out, we had my cousin Kate's wedding. She grew up 3 hours away and hasn't turned up to really any family events in the last decade. But her mother made her invite everyone to show off as there was over 400 people. Don't get me wrong, you could tell a lot of money was put into the event and it was lovely, but I personally wouldn't have liked it for my day. The new husband had a niece and nephew, so they did the flower girl and ring bearer roles. And yes, there were tantrums thrown when the news broke, and it only took 5 minutes into the wedding for a tantrum to happen because one of the kids wanted to sit in the front and not a few pews back. My partner has gotten into the habit after 4 years of these events of keeping track of the tantrums on her notes app, and she counted 3 in the church alone. It's only gotten worse as it was raining after, and the kids didn't want to wear jackets to get to the car, and many tears happened. The meal wasn't much better, but thankfully we're at the head table with my grandparents away from it, but you couldn't not hear the whining and shouting occasionally throughout the meal. Things got bad when, at some point before dessert, 2 of the kids came up to me and asked why they were not invited to my wedding, as they had been for Kate. A bit stunned, I just replied that the place we're having it was only for adults. That obviously was the wrong answer because almost immediately another tantrum about how apparently their parents had promised them they'd be the flower girls at my wedding erupted. Thankfully they're small for their age, so it's pretty easy to pick them up and move them away from the head table, which was on a stage and away from people staring. While this was happening, my parents were confronted by my aunts asking how was it that their kids were not invited. My parents just repeated the same thing as I had, and this also wasn't good enough. At this point, my grandfather and I were behind them with 2 of their screaming children. I honestly don't know what came over me, but I blurted out, You really cannot see why I might not want to have your children there on my wedding day. Can you please stop discussing this right now? It's not the time and people are already staring at us." And left. Well, let's just say that while most of my family agreed with what I said, now my aunts are refusing to attend the wedding until I apologize to them and their kids and invite them. Some family members think it was the wrong time to say anything or just apologize to keep the peace. But honestly, I don't want to, as I don't think what I said was that bad, especially considering the thing I knew that the groom's family were saying after the wedding, from what I heard from Kate and her new husband. But as I was reading through this, it just felt like at some point something like this was going to happen anyway. And I just almost felt relief for you when it did happen, because now they're not going to your wedding and it sounds like it's going to be quite peaceful. I think you've done yourself a favor, if anything. But Mountain Girl 60 says, "I'm dying laughing. I'm surprised everyone has let it go this long. As far as I'm concerned, you're the hero of the day. The only thing I will be doing now is contacting my aunts and telling them that I understand they are no longer coming to the wedding. So please consider their invitations rescinded, and that I appreciate the heads up early so that I can fill their spots with people who I wasn't able to invite before. And do not back down. When they start to fuss about being uninvited, tell them that it is already too late. You were just contacting them to thank you for letting you know early. But you have already invited other people, so no. Neither they nor their husbands are invited any longer. If anyone else in the family starts to make noise, tell them you have more friends waiting in the wings if they'd like to be uninvited as well." Fallout 4 Addict says, "Not the arsehole, don't even invite the parents. Problem solved. Bonus points, your wedding will be an amazing event that your whole family will remember, and future weddings within your family will more likely also be child-free because you were the first and paved the way to make it okay to keep badly behaved family members in their place, away from important life events, unless they learn how to behave. Enjoy your wedding." Megsy says, "If you have to apologize for what you said, then they have to apologize for every time their children ruined events, because keeping the peace is important. Your fiance's notes will come in real handy, lol." In all seriousness, I fully believe that some people think that kids will just suddenly know how to be functioning human adults when they turn 18. I think their only job is to placate them. Like the kids will just magically learn how to be good people. Nope, not how it works. Stand your ground, and frankly your family needs to start having a discussion of whether you want this to be the rest of your lives or not, because these kids won't get any better at this rate. Not the arsehole. Absolutely, and on the back of that comment, I always feel sad for the children in these particular situations. Yes, they might be absolute little turds right now, but the parents around them is just not helping the situation at all. And like the comment said again, they're going to grow up to continue to be little turds, because they're doing them no favors by allowing this behavior to continue, which I just find real sad at the same time. So Opie comes back in a couple of days after Christmas and says, "So yeah, Christmas happened, and yeah, it was apparently a shit show. I'd planned ahead of time to spend Christmas with my partner and in-laws who live an hour away, then celebrate Boxing Day back home with my parents and grandparents. But to my surprise, my mother contacted me late on Christmas Day, just to say the Boxing Day celebrations were called off after a disastrous Christmas meal with the family, which at last minute included the aunts and the children. So apparently they decided that as the family had been going no contact in the week since the events at my cousin Kate's wedding, they were going to turn up to my great-grandmother's house for Christmas and confront me about it to my face to make me apologize for calling out their kids' behavior. They usually do their own thing at Christmas and often go to their in-laws. Forgot to mention they are married to brothers who are two of the weirdest men I've ever met, but that's a rant for another day. Oh dear. I guess they thought if my 99-year-old great-grandmother, my mother's mum's mum, was present, I wouldn't refuse their demands. However, they failed to check that I might not be there, and according to my father, their faces when they realized their plan backfired were hilarious. Obviously, their little terrors were running rampant and screaming their heads off, and one even had a temper tantrum because there were no presents for them under the tree. The aunts had turned up in the middle of Christmas meal several hours after all the presents were opened, but apparently the kid couldn't comprehend that, according to my aunt, at one point my great-grandmother got so annoyed at the screaming, she yanked her hearing aids out. No one in the family had thought to fill her in with what had gone down at Kate's wedding, It was one of those we all thought someone else had done, so she was a bit confused at first. She knew the wedding was child-free, so she couldn't understand why they were making such a fuss about it, and to just get over it. She said she'd like to enjoy the likely last wedding she'll ever attend in peace, away from screaming children. My family has a very dark sense of humour. Between that and what I had said earlier, I think most of my family have just enough of their crazy excuses. Obviously, after Great Granny said this, they went on about their poor angels, but they didn't have much of a leg to stand on, as pretty soon after they opened their mouths, the terrors had gone into my grandmother's homemade baked Alaska and had dropped it, ruining the dessert for everyone. Apparently, my grandfather just snapped and told them to get out and let them enjoy one family event in peace, and they needed to get their children's behaviour in order if they ever wanted to be invited to another family event, as their children's behaviour was out of line and was only going to backfire on them as they got older. This man had served for over 10 years in the army and another 25 years as a police officer, and this is terrifying when he snapped, so understandably they got out of there ASAP. My great-grandmother even opened one of her fancy bottles of whiskey to celebrate. My grandfather had been one of those who did not want to disinvite them and keep the peace. He's financially contributing to the wedding, but when I got home yesterday he gave me full permission to rescind their invitations. I had originally decided to not rescind my aunt's invitations, but give them a warning that if they turned up with their children or tried to cause a scene, they would be escorted off the property immediately. But now, after an emergency family meeting on Boxing Day, we ended up just rescinding their invitations and instead just using what we'd have spent on the 4 meals on jewellery for myself, my mum and great-grandmother as a memento. My parents and partner are 100% behind me on this, and we're lucky that our venue is owned by my soon-to-be in-laws, and with that, security is included in the cost, as they have had several crazy family member stories from renting it out for weddings and events over the last 30 plus years. It's run in-house by my soon-to-be brother-in-law, so we have full control of who is allowed on the property during the wedding. My maid of honour and bestie has also volunteered herself in the case of one of them turning up in a white dress, to be the one to take for the team and spill a glass of red wine. Her backup plan is using my dogs, both Westland Highland Terriers who will be at the wedding, who are trained to pee on command and have an accident. She has a drama teacher, so I'd be pretty confident in her being able to make it look convincing as an accident if a worst case scenario happened. In terms of if I knew kids coming up to me at the wedding was their parents' way of guilt tripping me, yes, I did know. This is far from the first time it has happened. For example, when one of the terrors had their Holy Communion, it fell around the same time my partner and I had adopted our 2 dogs. We hadn't expected to get 2, but they were inseparable and we just fell in love with them immediately and took them both home. My job requires me to work Saturday morning, so couldn't attend the church service for the communion, and there was no real way to get it off early on, so I made sure everyone knew I wouldn't be attending the church service, making sure to hand over a card with money in for the child the day before with a small gift, because apparently to my aunts money doesn't count as a gift. Anyway, later on at the meal, the sister of the child who had their communion just came straight up to me during the event and asked me why I never turned up to the church in front of everyone, and asked where was their puppy. Apparently my aunt had told him that one of my puppies was for them. Let's just say tantrums happened and the puppy they did end up getting lasted 1 week, as now it lives with my in-laws. They hadn't pulled that stunt in a while, at least not to myself, so I guess that's what threw me off more than anything else. As with what was said by Kate's in-laws not long after I got back to the table, Kate's now mother-in-law sent us over a round of drinks to help with our growing headaches, as there was a lot of how on earth do you deal with this on a regular basis, and oh boy, they're going to be nightmares when they're older. We were also betting with the rest of the bridal party when the next tantrum would happen. My partner won betting when there would be one just before the speeches, and a few rounds of guess what the reason for the tantrum was, thanks to my partner's 4-year-long notes. Kate's in-laws also share my family's dark humour, so later in the night we were betting which would be the worst once the teenage years and all those hormones hit. Was it the most adult way of dealing with it? Probably not, but was too drunk and annoyed to care about that. Couple of comments with Opie replying to him, so the last Mongo says, glad things are working out, and just have to say, loving your great-grandmother. Opie says, oh truly the woman is iconic. She also technically got this whole saga started as she set me up with my partner all those years ago. Gratified viewer says, 3 fucking cheers for grandpa and great-grandma. Those two are easily the heroes of this story. Of course, after the little shit's ruined dessert, I wouldn't be surprised if other relatives were getting in line to tell the aunts off. Opie says, oh yep, they ruined the dessert for basically every family member over 50. It was about 25-ish people, and a lot of them live over a day's drive away. To only get my grandma's baked Alaska once a year at Christmas, so they were not pleased at all. The thing that made me chuckle is like, I'm not sure if I should be chuckling at it or not, but grandma just like, fuck this, I'm pulling the hearing aids out, like, I'm not listening to that shit. And whilst I would like to think that was concluded for OP, I think stories like that are never going to be truly concluded. I think the wedding will come round. There will be some extra drama from someone in that family. They just seemed unhinged. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit. Doesn't have an update as yet, from Fresh Ad 7431, and says, am I the arsehole for telling my dad the real reason my half sister won't be in the same room with me? I, 31 female, have a half sister, Ellen, 34 female. Same dad, different mums. No, I'm not the result of an affair. Ellen and I are not close and never have been. We only saw each other at family get-togethers. Ellen has a husband, Tom, 34. Tom is a nice guy, and when she introduced him to the family, he and my husband hit it off, and my husband ended up hiring Tom to work for him. Tom and Ellen got married and had a baby, and during this time, they started having problems. I didn't hear this from Ellen, but from my dad and from my husband, who was told by Tom. Tom then started staying really late at work, and then progressed to coming over to our house, often for drinks with my husband, and by extension, me. He became a regular visitor to our house and began unloading his problems. This went on for about 8 months until one evening Tom was quite tipsy and admitted he developed a crush on me. Understandably, this meant he didn't come back to our house. He has profusely apologized for this and we're fine now, but obviously I just prefer some distance. I guess that whole thing was a wake-up call for him because he and Ellen started going to counseling. During the counseling, he told her what had happened because Ellen called me and screamed at me for the whole situation. She said she and Tom would never be in the same room with me again after what I'd done. She made excuses for not coming to family gatherings I was at for a while before my dad confronted her, and she said I had a falling out and we weren't speaking. I went along with this because I didn't want to tell my dad the truth either. It's been over a year of this. But this all came to a head over my dad inviting both of us to our families to New Year's Eve and getting mad that Ellen wouldn't come if I was going. He started ranting at me that we needed to grow up and make peace, and if we didn't want to talk to each other fine, but not being able to be in the same room was nuts. I got sick of being berated and said I agree, but it wasn't me who started it. My dad then demanded to know what the fight was about and wouldn't let up. Eventually, I just told him. He's furious. He called Ellen and yelled at her. He called my husband and yelled at him. He is seething that no one told him and that he's been acting like things are fine with Tom this whole time. Ellen is furious with me for telling Dad, saying I did this on purpose and have ruined things with Tom after she worked so hard to fix them. I feel bad for the results, but I also feel like carrying this burden of this rift that I didn't cause was unfair on me in the first place. I've kept quiet when I didn't have to. But once I was getting heat over it, it just became too much. Am I the arsehole for spilling? Now for me in this, it may be the wording and I may be completely off on this one. But after the news came out that Tom had a crush on you and, you know, this was a wake-up call for Ellen, and during the counseling, he told her about what happened, so we don't know if that was the full truth or not, because then Ellen then called you and screamed at you for the whole situation about what you had done. It immediately had me thinking, has Ellen been told the full truth here? Because it certainly doesn't feel like it to me. Again, that might be just a flying statement there, might be completely wrong, but it felt that way to me. But Carter says Tom has agency over his relationship with Ellen, and now he acts on his unreciprocated feelings towards you. Ellen has agency over a relationship with Tom and how she chooses to process his emotional infidelity. You have no agency in the situation, given that you just happen to exist as yourself, and Tom developed one-directional feelings while being estranged from Ellen. Her blaming you for the situation is nothing more than displacement of her own anger at Tom and insecurity in her relationship with him. She has nothing to be mad at you for. Only Tom holds that burden for his emotions and her for whatever part she had to play in that early estrangement. Not the arsehole. Midwest Panic 69 says, not the arsehole, your sister made the problem about you. Lied to your dad about what the problem was and caused a rift in the family over her own insecurity. You did the right thing in all of this, and you shouldn't have to take the heat for being the adult in the room. Bark says, not the arsehole about this particular thing, but I think you should have done your sister a solid and sent Tom home when he started socializing frequently at your house. Not because of the crush, but because presumably she was at home with a baby all the time. Holdaka says, and replies to that saying, thank you, I'm so glad someone else noticed that Tom spent 8 months hanging out at their house drinking most nights while his wife was at home with a newborn because problems. And OP and her husband just enabled it. Parking B says, not the arsehole for spilling, but you're the arsehole for allowing him to come over for 8 months while your sister was home with a newborn baby. Do you know how difficult it is in those first few months? Couple that with postpartum and marital issues. None of that is your fault, but I think you guys enabled him and are now focusing on the wrong part of this. Not really about the crush, but more about the fact that you allowed her husband to escape and drink in your home without so much of a heads up. She feels betrayed. It feels a little weird that you could show compassion to her husband, but not her. But now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And our next story comes from Honest Version 8785 and says, am I the asshole for telling my friend that he deserved to have his girlfriend cheat on him and then get his ass beat by her affair partner? And just to give you a couple of warnings before we do get into the story, timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below, so feel free to skip it. It does contain emotional abuse, manipulation, physical violence, mentions of depression, and financial abuse as well. And let's get started. I can already see a name. Hear me. My friend Mark, male 18, has recently been having a lot of relationship troubles with his girlfriend, Leah, female 18. They got together back in February of this year, when we were still in high school, and their relationship has become a complete train wreck. Mark was, and still is, head over heels for Leah. He has told me and my other friends that she is definitely the one, and that he eventually plans on marrying and settling down. It's all seemed both premature and immature to me, but it's besides the point. Leah, on the other hand, is a nightmare. She's cheated on Mark several times now, and every time she does, she gives Mark some lame story about him not being supportive enough, or that she made a mistake, or that she wanted to see him get jealous for her sake. He gobbles it up every time. According to Mark, Leah largely acts like this because her father was very abusive towards her and her mother, and therefore she carries a lot of trauma with her. Mark constantly reiterated that he wants to help her work past that, but things haven't really been going his way. Since September, Leah has been seeing this other guy, Derek, male 22, and she's 100% infatuated with him. I only know this based on what my other friends and Mark have been telling me because I was in another state for college. Mark has been arguing a lot with Leah about Derek, and she has threatened to leave Mark if he doesn't just simply accept her for who she is. He did. Not only that, he and Leah have entered what he calls a semi-open relationship. This means, according to Mark, that Leah is allowed to see Derek as much as she wants, but Mark isn't allowed to see anyone else. This is because Leah feared that Mark would become emotionally invested in them and leave her. Mark begrudgingly agreed to this and has been seething for months about it. Since about November, Leah has been seeing Derek more than she does Mark. While Mark doesn't admit to it, our other friends have told me that she is essentially in a full-time relationship with Derek and only comes to Mark for money and emotional support. Fast forward to this week and I'm back home for the break. Mark started texting me on Saturday saying that he hated Derek for trying to steal his girl and wanted to beat his ass that night. He said that he wanted me to come along since all of our other friends couldn't. They made up excuses not to go. They have told me this, but Mark doesn't know. Since I just got back home the day before, I was still exhausted, so I point blank refused Mark's request. I told him that Leia was a lost cause and I wasn't going to fight some people I'd never seen for her. Mark started begging me, saying that Leia is the love of his life and that he needs my help. I refused again. He then says he'll go on his own, but I told him that he probably shouldn't. I woke up Sunday morning to more than 300 messages on my phone from Mark and all of our friends. Long story short, Mark went over to Derek's place to bring Leia back. He ended up getting his ass kicked by Derek and his friends. They only stopped when Leia asked them to. I called Mark and told him that he should probably talk to a lawyer or something, but he refused since Leia asked him to not escalate the situation. I then told him that he was being dumb, and this triggered him so much he started saying how I was a bitch and a snake for not backing him up and how I was a fake friend. I was so irritated at this point, so I told Mark that he deserved to get jumped, and it made sense while Leia preferred Derek over him. He hung up on me, and we haven't spoken since. Since then, my other friends have been saying that I'm an arsehole for how I handled the conversation. But they do agree Mark is a dumbass. Am I the arsehole? And there was one relevant comment on this one from Big Philosopher 2735 who says, not the arsehole, he's delusional. Your other friends should have been honest with him. Maybe if everyone was honest, he'd get it. Good for you for not getting involved in the fight. Opie says we've all been trying to get him to leave her, but he keeps on insisting that she is the most spectacular person in the world beneath all the shit she gets up to. Mr. Pink Gold says not the arsehole and please convince Mark to press charges for assault and to leave that woman alone. She does not want him, she only wants his money apparently. OP quotes that and says he won't because she told him she doesn't want that. The fight left him with a black eye and a busted lip, among other injuries. Not only his money she likes, she says that he makes her feel like she's listened to and valued. Someone on the back of that one says, you know, if he went there to provoke violence, he may get some charges too. And OP says, since I wasn't there, I can't verify this, but apparently the other guy punched him first. Also, there is the fact that Mark got his ass completely kicked by not only the guy, but also his buddies, while they didn't take any injuries whatsoever. And of course, there's going to be, when we cover some of the comments, there's going to be some of the usual doormat comments, absolutely, because, you know, you can see it right here. Grow a spine, etc., etc., but I can't help but feel sorry for the person at the same time, because they're being completely used and taken advantage of. Yes, they're absolutely allowing it, I get that, but it still doesn't make it right. And I don't agree with him going around trying to, you know, beat people up, etc., etc., but there's something not quite right in his head at this moment in time to be allowing this. And I do wonder if sitting him down, it might not make any difference whatsoever, but sitting him down as a group with all your friends and being totally blunt and honest and open with him and saying, you know, you can see everyone's concerned, that we all really care for you and we're concerned about what this person is doing to you. They're using you emotionally, physically, and monetarily as well. And regardless of people calling him a doormat, a cuck, whatever, which I did already see in one of the comments, no one deserves to be treated like that. Had to be a bloody Mark as well, didn't it? Another user says, classic, fuck around and find out. A friend of mine did this in college over a girl. We all rolled up to watch them fight. My buddy got his ass whipped in hilarious fashion. It was 1v1, so we just let it happen, of course. Back in the good old days of 2003-ish. Funniest part was riding back to his place, he was like, damn, dude was sticking my ass so hard. I think the guy had some boxing training. Nerdy Swamp Witch says not the arsehole, but Mark needs a full-on intervention. We love you, buddy, but what this relationship is doing to you is toxic. Open relationships aren't open only on one side. Leia is using you for money and emotional support, but she does not love you. You do not treat someone you love this way. You need to see a therapist to work through the emotional abuse she is putting you through. If you don't, we can't continue to be people who support you and let you vent about this. PFX Vamp says, man, I don't get how anyone could possibly be a Mark. I mean, my partner is great, but if I found out she was cheating on me, I'd walk immediately. It's not worth getting a criminal record / ass kicking over something that you can't change. Not the arsehole. Tell Mark he needs to get his shit together and dump the dead weight. And as Peachy says, your friend is emotionally abused, likely due to his own emotional illness. It happens to men. And just like with women, pointing out the logical obvious won't work. What you need to do if you care is ask and beg him to see a professional. Maybe even set up an appointment for him. But no, you are not the arsehole for not going and getting beaten up with him because he is a masochist. And there was many other comments as well, you know, like simp, doormat, cuck, the usual stuff. So OP does update the post and says some of my friends ended up going out with Mark to see how he was doing. We didn't want to go to his parents' place since Leia was now living there with him and we didn't want to see her. He does look very beaten up. Black eye, bruises all over his face and arms, busted lip, etc. But he was surprisingly in a good mood and even insisted that I didn't have to apologize for how I spoke last time. He told us that Derek ended up dumping Leia a few days after the fight. Apparently he asked Leia to dump Mark. She refused and they argued. I'll spare you most of it. The conversation ended with Leia being kicked out of his apartment in the middle of the night and Mark had to come pick her up. He has refused his parents an hour request to escalate the situation at Leia's request. Mark has said that Leia has been very depressed about Derek dumping her and spends a lot of days crying. Mark just says he's incredibly thankful to be there to comfort her and emotionally support her. He keeps on saying that when it comes down to it, Leia chose him over Derek and nothing can take that away. Like I said above, Leia has decided to return to living with Mark. She can technically go to her mother's house but doesn't want to. Here's the real kicker. Mark says that he has a very good reason to believe that Leia might be in the early stages of pregnancy now. My friends and I assumed the child was Derek's, but Mark insisted that regardless, it would be his kid. We asked him to get paternity testing and he has refused since he can't do that to Leia. We've told him that the relationship is toxic, but he didn't want to hear it since that was a matter of perspective. Also, his parents have no clue about the potential pregnancy. He says that in the future, he doesn't want us to say anything about Leia unless it's the absolute truth. His speech of singing her praises. My other friends and I are all left pretty stunned, and I'm thinking that at this stage, I'll slowly be removing myself from Mark's life. It sucks since I've known him for a long time and do enjoy his company. But I don't think I'll be able to remain friends with him in good faith if I'm not able to speak honestly to him. A commenter says, dude is trying to ruin his life as fast as possible. Opie says 100% he is. It's tragic to watch him give up everything for this pointless relationship. Lotus Biscoff Baby says, forgive me for this, but me personally, I wouldn't even bother with someone like Mark. He's delusional and stupid at this point, and he can't even see how manipulative Leia is being. He's willing to throw his whole life away for a girl who has no respect for him and for a baby that probably isn't even his. OP is probably best just to keep your distance or go no contact with Mark, seeing as he's made his choice. OP says, yeah, I'll be keeping my distance. It's just so awful that he's throwing his life away for the most useless reason. But Up High Scottish says, I, in Mark's mother's place, would kick Leia out of my house and tell Mark the child would not enter my house without a paternity test, and I would no longer be supporting him financially. OP says if his parents try anything, he'd go no contact with them. He told us that between his parents, dad and stepmom and Leia, he's choosing Leia. It really does suck, and I feel like it's extremely unfair to them. And that was OP's last post on the matter. As you can imagine, a lot of comments saying more doormats, you know, simp, etc, etc. Some people that saying that some people can't be saved unless they sort of accept that help. And I'll probably take some flack for my comment and, you know, accept it. Because I think OP is totally right to take a step back from this situation, maybe keep the door open for Mark for one day when, and hopefully he does decide to return to their friend group and see what's going on in his life. Whether that happen or not, who knows? But a part of me still does find this incredibly sad that there's someone out there willing to accept this, such low self-esteem that they're willing to accept this kind of behavior in their life. Yes, like I keep saying, they are accepting it, but it still doesn't make it right, in my opinion. Anyway, now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? I'm sure you already know how you'd deal with it if it was you. And let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit from B-Day Surprise Am I the Arsehole, saying, am I the arsehole for telling my fiance's friends that they can't organize a party for his birthday because I already have plans? So, my fiance, 28 male, and I, 27 female, have been together for 6 years. We're in the middle of planning our wedding, but that's besides the point. Lol. Anyway, he's the love of my life and my best mate in the world, and I want him to be happy. So, we live in a city that is close to some beautiful hills. Sometimes we go for drives in those hills. There is a little town that my fiance loves, even though he has never actually stayed there. It is his birthday next Friday, so I decided to take him on a mini holiday to that town. I found a cute hotel and researched and organised some activities that I know he'll love. We stayed from Friday to Monday. I talked to his boss and he agreed to let my fiance take 2 days off, but won't say anything to keep it a surprise. So yesterday, one of his friends messaged me and told me about a party they've been organising for my fiance and asked me to guide him to it without giving it away. The party was supposed to be on Friday night. I told them that we'll be out of town Friday night, but I'd help them throw it on Thursday. His friend started then blowing up my phone, telling me it's uncool to take him away on his birthday without prior warning or discussing it with him, and that he'd probably rather spend his birthday having a beer with the boys instead of doing boring couple shit. After some back and forth, I told them to get fucked and that they should have consulted with me and not the other way around. They said they're going to tell my fiance about both of our plans so that he can decide what he wants to do. I asked them not to, as I went to great lengths to keep it a surprise, but they said that it's only fair that I should have remembered that they might want to do something, and that most of them have known him for longer than I do. I feel like I shouldn't have to ask for permission to take my fiance on a trip on his birthday, but maybe it's a faux pas. Someone asked for info and says, is your fiance the first in his crowd to get married? Because I'm guessing yes, and that his friends are pissed, and so they're claiming him, like you are Yoko breaking up the band. It will not be over. Watch out. OP says he's the second of the group, but the first one is divorced again though. Another user says, not the arsehole. Is this a traditional that throws parties for him? Do you typically check with them? Because if you don't, I'd be pointing out that you had no reason to think anything had changes, and as his partner of 6 years, the polite thing for them to do was to run the date by you. OP says they have thrown parties for him before, but it's not a tradition. Last year we were in Italy on one day of his birthday, and 3 years ago he just wanted to have a quiet one with some movies. And another user says, not the arsehole, but you should ask your fiance. Had it been any other day and you had planned a surprise trip, it wouldn't be an issue. But it's his birthday. He'll enjoy it with you as well as his friends. You need to ask him what he wants to do on his birthday. OP says that's not how we work. We're big on surprises. He would think it's strange if I asked him what he wants to do. If he had a specific thing in mind, he would have told me. Now, putting myself in the friend situation, I'd definitely be talking to the fiance first and just asking, have you got anything planned for that day? Because me and the lads, we got a surprise for him and we wanted to keep it a surprise as well. And then if she said, no, I've got a surprise from that day, she tried to compromise as well. She said, how about the Thursday? And they was like, no, we've known him longer, blah, 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 lads. I can't blame you for your reaction on this one. Deadly Housefrau says, not the arsehole. Talk to your fiance and tell him generally that you had planned a surprise for him. Tell him his friends planned something without looping you in and won't be flexible about doing it one day early. And tell him they have threatened to spoil your surprise and ask him to specifically tell him not to do that. Carmela Sky says, not the arsehole. What kind of friends organise a surprise party for a friend without the partner? And are you his fiance, not just a girl he dates for a while? And for the people who say that OP should have checked with a fiance, it's a surprise. And the friends are really the arseholes for the shitty comments and that they will snitch. Edit. Also, if they really ruin the surprise and let OP's fiance decide, what a shitty decision should he make? Stay with the boys and his fiance will be disappointed, or he chose OP, the woman he wants to marry by the way, and his boys will throw a tantrum. This would really ruin his birthday because there is no such things like a good solution. Happy birthday, you can decide which people you will disappoint. So OP did come in with an update and said, so some of you asked for an update, so I shall deliver. First things first, the surprise wasn't ruined. We got to go and my fiance loved it. I followed your advice and told him that I had something planned that clashed with the plans his mates made, and they are now threatening to ruin the surprise. I offered to tell him what I had planned, but he shut that down pretty quickly. He then called one of the boys and asked them what the fuck was wrong with them to pull this stunt, and that they should know by now that our birthday surprises are a very important part of our relationship and something we look forward to the whole year. After a lengthy talk with his mate, it turned out that the boys wanted one last big party piss up before he got married, as they all felt like he was drifting away from them and that his priorities shifted. Fiance then told him it's normal for a priority to shift when you're in a long-term relationship. He made it known that he was very disappointed with the boys' behaviour towards me and that they needed to apologise. Apart from that, we had a wonderful weekend. He loved it and even ordered a blanket with his favourite photos of the trip on it. My fiance didn't go to the boys' night out last week as no one has apologized to me. I guess that showed them that he was serious, and most of them called or messaged me afterwards with an apology, except for one bloke. Everyone apart from him will be coming to ours for a barbecue next week, and we're both hoping to be able to move past this rather unpleasant experience. That's all, guys. Take care. Good supportive partner, telling the boys what's up, apart from one of them who I got a little feeling, obviously I don't know, he may be the instigator of the bunch, but I really do hope that their barbecue went well and they got together, apologized, made up, and things are a lot better between them all now. But now I'm going to turn this one towards you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below.
Wake up, get up, stretch my legs, eat some breakfast, milk and eggs, brush my teeth up, wash my face, throw my clothes on, start my day. Wake up, I can smell the smoke from the bacon. Let's go.